Chapter 1262. The main culprit of the ninth floor of hell was a big eyeball monster. Its overall shape was very much like a large football. Its skin was sunken to varying degrees, just like the surface of the moon. It was so ugly that people could not look at it directly, not to mention why it was bound by so many chains. Just based on its appearance, Jun Changxiao felt that it should be locked up. Otherwise, it would be a crime to go out and scare children and plants. However, speechless, this guy actually had the cheek to say that he had a perfect spiritual body. He had seen shameless people before, but he had never seen such a shameless person. The system promptly complained. He is still lacking compared to the host. I can vouch for this with my dignity. Scram. Jun Changxiao looked at the big eyeball again and resisted the urge to vomit. Evolving into such an ugly appearance, aren't you afraid of scaring yourself when you sleep at night? The side mission was to defeat it. Go Sheng would definitely mock it mercilessly. Ka ka ka. Ka 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 ka. The big eyeball monster struggled. Unfortunately, under the chains it could not pounce over. It could only roar with anger. Brat, I'm going to eat you. Jun Changxiao, who was originally a little worried, saw that the other party could not break free from the chains. He took a step forward, maintaining the closest distance, and laughed in an extremely annoying manner. Come, come. Xiao. At this moment, the patterns on the chains disappeared into thin air, and immediately, bang bang bang, all of them broke. The smile on Jun Changxiao's face stiffened. Whoosh whoosh. The big eyeball monster, which was not suppressed by the chains, suddenly burst into its strongest state. One could only see the majestic evil aura pressing down on them like waves. This is troublesome. Boom! A rumbling sound came from the ninth floor of hell. Ripples spread out crazily, shaking the dozens of array barriers in the dark to gradually materialize. Boss. In the patrol room, the ugly emissary said with a solemn expression. Without the master's permission, I'm afraid it's not appropriate to remove the seal of the eyes of the void. The black emissary said worriedly. If it gets too big, it will shake the prison's defense system. It won't. The black emissary clasped his fingers and said seriously. The eyes of the void has been sealed for so long. Even if it temporarily regains its freedom, its strength will be greatly reduced. It will definitely not be able to bring the defense system. Boom! Before he could finish speaking, another powerful movement came from the light screen. The ceiling of the nine hells was hit by the giant eyeball monster's powerful attack, and instantly, waves of energy rippled. Buzz buzz buzz. Dozens of array formations began to distort. The envoy smiled coldly and said, You want to break out of prison as soon as the seal is broken? What do you think the starry sky fortress is? Boom. Boom. The large eyeball continued to crash into the defensive barrier. Although the explosion of power was strong, it only caused the barrier to tremble and showed no signs of being shaken. When the prisoners of the 8th floor of hell felt the quake-like shaking, they couldn't help but wonder if that fellow had already started fighting with the main culprit of the 9th floor of hell. Ifeishua thought to herself, this isn't caused by a fight, but more like a deliberate collision. Could it be? That guy wants to break out of prison by force? Boom. Boom. In the 9th floor of hell, the giant eyeball monster was still crashing into the defensive system of the starry sky fortress. Although it caused a huge commotion, it was actually of no use. Ugly freak. Suddenly a voice came from the dark area below. Are you ignoring me? The void eye, which was about to attack the defensive barrier, turned its eyeball and found that the human it had sent flying was walking out with a long spear. You're still alive? Pfft. Jun Changxiao couldn't help but laugh out loud. It was undeniable that the sudden attack of the giant eyeball was very strong, even stronger than Yin Hu. But how could he be killed in a second when he was wearing the great sage set? Jun Changxiao looked up and said, We're on the same side. Neither of us is resigned to our fate, and we're eager to break out of this cage and pursue freedom. Come. He pointed the spear and said boldly, Become my contract beast, and we'll work together to pierce through the sky. Huff huff huff. As soon as he said that, the dark aura suddenly appeared in midair and quickly condensed into a large hand, tightly grasping Jun Changxiao, who had just entered the tricking mode. The Void Eye sneered. Kid, haven't you realized that I can crush you as easily as crushing an ant? Huff huff. Huff huff huff. The evil power of darkness erupted again, dancing around like a group of demons. You're underestimating me? Jun Changxiao's lips curled into a smile. He was clearly being controlled and could die at any time, but he could still smile. This made the giant eyeball furious. Damn you. I'll make you wish you were dead. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The surrounding dark power instantly pressed down on Jun Changxiao. However, just as it was about to get close, Go Xing suddenly opened his mouth and took the initiative to suck the evil energy into his body. The Void Eye was stunned. The Z Messenger and the Cho Messenger were also dumbfounded. The Mao Messenger covered his mouth and said in shock, he actually ate it. Not only was Jun Changxiao eating, but he was also eating very happily. His eyes narrowed into a line. Dad. In his energy center, little Xie said excitedly, I love you. Huff huff huff. The evil energy that was absorbed into his body was all transferred over, as if it was a super tonic being swallowed by the little guy. And then it was strengthening itself bit by bit. The Void Eye was an evil being. Little Xie, who was born in the mortal universe, was also an evil being. Therefore, when Jun Changxiao came to the 9th level of hell and saw the giant eyeball covered in dark energy, he was immediately overjoyed. Little Xie has food. For example, when the seal was lifted, the terrifying energy wave that pressed down had not seeped into his body yet, but he took the initiative to absorb it and then let the evil spirit convert it into energy. The Void Eye was shocked. Its evil energy was an incurable poison to any living being, but this guy took the initiative to absorb so much of it and was completely fine. This was unbelievable. Huff huff. At this moment, Jun Changxiao had already swallowed all the dark power that pressed down on him. He lowered his head and aimed his mouth at the big hand that was holding him tightly. Eat. Eat all of it. Dad, the evil spirit said loudly. Can I do it myself? Okay. Jun Changxiao looked up and opened his mouth. Whoosh. Little Xie flew out of his dantian and attached herself to the big dark hand in the form of a 2- or 3-year-old child. Her eyes were filled with ecstasy, and then she began to gorge herself. This is, the giant eyeball exclaimed, an evil spirit. The voice was transmitted to the patrol room through the array. The ZZ and the others all stood up with shock in their eyes. In the mortal universe, a special consciousness would form, and then gradually form a spirit seed. Finally, it would evolve into a spirit body, a spirit infant, and finally a complete creature. To put it bluntly, it was the upgraded version of the heaven and earth element. However, because it was born in the endless universe, its power was far stronger than that of its kind, and it was even known as the king of the elements. Spirit seeds were extremely rare, and top powerhouses dreamed of obtaining them. Now the spirit body that represented the most evil, the infant spirit had appeared in the 9th level of hell, and the patrol envoys could not remain calm. It's over. The Void Eye's eyes were filled with despair. It was not a spirit body, but an evil beast. In front of the infant spirit that was born from the essence of the universe, it was really delicious food. Because no matter how powerful the negative attack was, it was impossible to shake the king of evil. Calm down, calm down. The Void Eye was still calm, and it thought to itself, this infant spirit doesn't seem to be too strong. I should still have a chance. It stopped thinking, and its eyes widened to the extreme again, because another red light flew out of Jun Changxiao's mouth, and then floated in front of it. From the lotus shape, a 3-year-old child gradually unfolded. He patted his little belly band and said, Who gave you the courage to bully my father? Chapter 1263. Although the power of the eyes of the void had no effect on little Xie, and might even be a tonic, the other party didn't seem to be strong. He should still be able to save it. However, when Xiaohu flew out of Jun Changxiao's mouth and opened its mouth arrogantly, the big-eyed monster suddenly froze. Fire! Fire soul spirit! The voice of the eyes of the void was already trembling, and it was obviously crying. After all, the evil spirit was of the same attribute as it, and the fire soul spirit was of the opposite attribute. Can I still be saved? When Xiaohua appeared, the shock in the eyes of Zizhu and the others was even more intense. It was already very amazing to have one spirit seed in the mortal universe, but that guy actually had two. This was simply shocking. What's more, one was evil, and the other was fire. They should be mutually exclusive. Why could they coexist? Jun Changshao himself couldn't explain this problem. If he had to give a reason, it would be the Sky Origin Soul Suppressing Tower. Oh, right. There was this thing too. In terms of strength, the big-eyed monster was almost the same as the dark demon, who had previously harmed the world. The latter had been trained to call her grandaunt. If the former was taken in, the result could be imagined. No wonder Jun Changshao almost couldn't help laughing on the spot when he saw that the last boss was an evil creature. Even if you gave me a human powerhouse, similar to the patrol envoy level, I might have to pay a price. This one didn't need to. Since he had the magically modified vacuum cleaner, Gosheng definitely had rich clinical experience in dealing with unclean evil creatures. In summary, the eyes of the void was hopeless. It was also about to cry because the fire soul spirit had frightened it. The evil spirit was eating the evil attribute crazily. At this speed it would soon be eaten up. Every bit of power it released was condensed with painstaking efforts, but now it had become a wedding dress for others. Friend, the eyes of the void said in a serious tone. What you just said, we can seriously discuss it. What is it? Become my contract beast, and work together to poke a hole in the sky. It was scared. In the face of two little goblins who ate people without putting salt. If it didn't cower, its 10,000 years of cultivation would be in vain. Sorry. Jun Changshao shook his head and said, I don't want to discuss it with you. Little Xia had consumed a lot of evil attribute energy in a short period of time, and her strength had clearly increased, so he gave up on the idea of subduing her. The system said, it's mainly because it's too ugly. Father, Xiaohua asked, can I refine it? It couldn't consume the evil attribute, but it could use flames to purify and then enhance itself. For example, its current baby spirit form was also because it had defeated the Dark Demon King. In terms of strength, there was not much difference between the two evil beings. If he could purify them to his heart's content, he would definitely benefit greatly. Sure. Jun Changshao agreed. The big eyeball monster was now equivalent to a big cake. As a father, he would definitely share it equally with his sons, and not be biased. Xiaohua turned its head, its eyes twinkling. You. What are you doing? Don't act recklessly. The void eye panicked. In the end, it looked at Jun Changshao and roared. Brat, don't push me too far. That was right. His situation was very dangerous. But even a clay figurine has a temper. Even a rabbit will bite when cornered. If the spirit of the fire spirit really dared to. Huff huff. Xiaohua pouted and clenched its fists. Flames that could purify all evil in the world suddenly erupted, and it instantly turned into a small fireball. Seeing this, the void eye's anger and courage instantly withered. This little guy clearly didn't look very strong. So why did its flames make its mind tremble? If it knew that little Xia, who was eating elemental energy, was once a dark demon king, and had been refined into an infant spirit, it would understand why. Hey! Xiaohua said proudly. You have to cooperate or it'll hurt. The void eye despaired. No, I have to eat faster. Seeing that the big brother that always bullied it wanted a share of the pie, little Xia devoured the evil attribute even faster. After a short while, the dark hand that bound Jun Changshao was completely devoured. Then, it looked at the void eye with a scorching gaze, as if it was looking at a big cake. Ah! The big eyeball monster couldn't take it anymore. It roared angrily and then viciously slammed toward the ceiling. It wouldn't just sit there and wait for death. It wanted to break through the defenses and find a way to survive. Boom! Boom! The void eye completely went berserk and began to madly attack. The 9th floor of hell was instantly enveloped by a monstrous evil aura, which made Xiaohua and little Xia even more excited. Go! Whoosh whoosh! The two little guys rushed over and stuck to each other like plasters. One opened its mouth and ate, while the other used fire to purify it. Children, they liked to snatch food and toys. Thus, Neither of them was willing to fall behind. They wanted to take their share of the pie as quickly as possible. This made the Void Eye suffer. It could only desperately ram into the wall and resist. Boss. The ugly emissary frowned. Should we stop them? The two baby spirits that flew out of Jun Changxiao's body shocked them greatly. However, if they just watched from the sidelines, the main culprit of the 9th floor of hell would probably be completely wiped out. Master said so. The ugly emissary said. Every floor of hell has a teleportation formation that allows others to go down. The purpose is that if someone defeats the main culprit of the same floor, they will be replaced. Boss, you mean if that guy defeats the Void Eye, he will become the new main culprit of the 9th floor of hell? The rabbit asked. That's right. The ugly emissary kept looking at the big eyeball monster that was being bullied by the two baby spirits. To be honest, deep in his heart, he wanted to see the Void Eye purified, because this ancient great evil was too dangerous, and his master insisted on keeping it locked up. If it really broke out one day, it would definitely be a disaster for the mortal universe. Although the word justice was not written on the cloaks of the 12 patrol emissaries, they all had a righteous heart. For this reason, they were willing to serve in the Starry Sky Fortress and not pursue a higher martial path. Boom! Boom! Violent explosions frequently came from the 9th floor of hell, which made the prisoners of the 8th floor of hell very anxious. However, after a few hours, the commotion became quieter and quieter. What's going on? That guy fought with the main culprit for so long. It should be over by now. Yes, it was over. However, it was not as the prisoners thought. Jun Changxiao was being tortured to death because he was leisurely sitting in the distance and drinking tea. Plop. The huge Void Eye fell to the ground. Little Xia and the young man were still attached to it like two parasites. Judging from the current situation, the big eyeball's body was dark brown, which meant that the evil attribute in its body had either been absorbed or refined by the flames. His entire cultivation base had been wiped out. The most tragic thing was that it had become a wedding dress for the two baby spirits. Swish! Little Xia reluctantly landed, then lay on the ground, rubbed her protruding belly with both hands, and said happily, "That was so satisfying." "Dad," Xiaohua said, "we can keep this ugly thing. When we condense enough evil attribute in the future, we can continue to improve our strength." Hearing that, the Void Eye fainted on the spot. Chapter 1264. Xiaohua and Little Xia only dealt with the energy in the big eyeball monster's body, causing it to fall into absolute weakness. But as long as the tank was still there, as long as it was placed outside, sooner or later it would be filled with water again after a rainy day. So, this was a carrier that could be recycled again and again. Come. Jun Changxiao walked over and said with a smile, "Now we can discuss it properly." For Xiaohua and Little Xia, he decided to endure the risk of vomiting and forcefully subdue this ugly monster. The system said, "A father's love is like a mountain." "Fuck off," Jun Changxiao cursed, then said with a cold expression, "I will only give you 3 seconds to consider. If you don't compromise, then wait to be turned into ashes." Tears flowed out of the big eyeball monster's eyes. This must be deliberately sent by the Starry Sky Fortress to torture it. 1. Compromise. Compromise. As a great ferocious beast of the ancient era, it immediately admitted defeat after hearing Jun Changxiao's words. Of the 2 infant spirits, one could eat its attributes, and the other could purify its attributes. Facing them head-on was equivalent to courting death. Relax your mind, don't resist. As Jun Changxiao spoke, he released his soul force and then integrated it into the Void Eye's mind, beginning to sign an unfair contract. Xiaohua and Little Xia stood on both sides, crossing their arms and raising their heads, looking like they would beat it up if it didn't behave. Jun Changxiao had experienced signing contracts with beasts many times, so he could be said to be quite experienced. Coupled with the fact that the target was very cooperative, it only took half an hour to complete the contract. "Master," the Void Eye respectfully shouted. At this point, the 9 main criminals of the 9 levels of hell were all dealt with by Jun Changxiao, and he also unlocked the completion achievement. Ding! Side quest completed. Reward, 50,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points, 8000-010-0000. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the side quest and triggering the hidden reward. Reward, Lingyan Pavilion exclusive Divine Weapon Modification Stone X1. Opening Seal Talisman 3x1 has been transferred to the spatial ring. Because the Void Eye had become Jun Changxiao's contract beast, the side quest was completed. The exclusive Divine Weapon Modification Stone would be given to almost all missions, so it was not a rare item. Now that he was rewarded with an Opening Seal Talisman, he would definitely feel great. Brat. Suddenly, a voice came from the projection array in the sky. According to the rules of the Starry Sky Fortress, since you have dealt with the Eye of the Void, from now on, you are the main culprit of this layer of hell. Swish. On Jun Changxiao's prison uniform, the word main culprit gradually appeared. Images of him were also transmitted to the other 8 hells, and all the prisoners witnessed it. Oh my God! Shang Yohan's eyes widened as he said, the Patriarch has become the main culprit, and the main culprit of the 9th floor. The Harkin exclaimed. Master is truly ferocious. The other prisoners of hell, such as Hua Yinyao and Nebula Kid, also saw the words gathered in front of Jun Changxiao's chest through the light screen that suddenly appeared. They were shocked and said, he actually cleared the level. The entire prison was in an uproar. However, a change in the Master of the 9 Hells was a very big matter. Therefore, after the announcement was made, images appeared in the Starry Sky Fortress as well as voices. For a moment, Gou Xing seemed to have appeared on TV, becoming the focus of everyone's attention and causing an even more intense sensation. The 9th floor of hell actually changed its main culprit. I heard that the one who was previously imprisoned was an ancient great evil, whose strength was infinitely close to the upper level of the void-piercing realm. This guy can defeat it and replace it. His strength must be terrifying. Don't you think that this back view is a bit familiar? Damn. It seems to be the guy who openly attacked at the entrance of the inn. Jun Changxiao returned to his original appearance during the battle with the Yin envoy, but he was still recognized. After all, such an outstanding man, no matter where he was like a firefly in the dark, so bright and so outstanding. It's him. The grumpy brother lying on the hospital bed looked through the window at the light screen. His face, and even every muscle on his body stiffened. That guy could actually defeat the main culprit of the 9th floor. His previous provocations were equivalent to frantically testing the boundaries of the underworld. Jun Changxiao replaced the Eye of the Void and became the final boss of the 9 hells, instantly causing a huge sensation. In fact, the martial artists in the city didn't know that this guy fought from the 1st floor to the 9th floor. Otherwise the shock would only be greater. The main culprit? After looking at the 2 words printed on the prison uniform, Jun Changxiao shook his head and said, I don't want to be locked up here forever. The host can leave now, the system said. There were 2 reasons for coming to the Starry Sky Fortress. One was to buy the half-saint pill, and the other was to find the 9 great martial emperors. As for clearing the 9 hells, it was just out of interest. So now that it was done, it was time to return to the Starfall continent. The system said, how should the host get out? Yes. Jun Changxiao sat cross-legged and thought, how do I get out? From the 1st floor to the 9th floor. Why didn't the fortress care about it? They definitely allowed others to take the initiative to challenge. Otherwise they wouldn't have built a teleportation array. To put it simply, as long as you were in hell, you could do whatever you wanted. However, if you wanted to escape, they would definitely not agree. If I take out the space-time worm to gnaw on the defensive array, unless I can break it instantly, they will immediately be alerted. Jun Changxiao thought to himself. The system said seriously. The big eyeball monster attacked for so long just now, but it didn't shake the defensive system. It will be difficult for the host to escape with the space-time worm alone. Alone? Jun Changxiao said. You mean one is not enough? Do I need to gnaw on both the jade flower and the pillar? The system collapsed. What I mean is that the space-time worm won't work. What the hell is he thinking? No rush, no rush. Jun Changxiao thought to himself. I still have to think of a way to take the 9 great martial emperors away. So even if I escape, I have to go up and not directly escape to the outside world. Hey! He raised his head and shouted. I can come down, but can I still go up? No. Jun Changshao was depressed. If he had known this would happen, he would have thought of a way to secretly take the 9 great martial emperors into the Tianyuan prison pagoda. What if I insist on going up? You can't go up. The envoy sitting in the patrol room said through the formation. Because this is the strongest defensive system in the mortal universe. Even upper-level void-piercing cultivators can't do anything about it. Jun Changshao said disdainfully. No matter what formation in the world, there will be flaws. As long as I want to, I can easily break it. TSK. A few of the patrol envoys snorted. It was undeniable that this guy was very capable to fight his way from the 1st floor to the 9th floor, and even defeat the envoy. However, the fortress's formation system was of the highest level in the mortal universe. How could it be easily broken by others? Kid, the envoy said indifferently. Aren't you afraid of biting your tongue? Jun Changshao spread his hands and said. If you don't believe me, you can take a gamble. Gamble on what? Gamble that your gun doesn't have a... Bah, I said the wrong line. Gamble that if I break through each isolation formation, you will allow me to freely enter and leave inside. What if I can't do it? That big guy who blocked the way earlier. I don't want the 1,000,000 spirit stones he owes me. Chapter 1265. Jun Changshao was a person who treated money like dirt, but regarded spirit stones as treasures. Therefore, if he was willing to bet the 1,000,000 spirit stones that Yin Hu owed him, it meant that he was serious. The envoy fell silent. Could it be that this guy really had the confidence to break the array? Being cautious was an advantage, but being overly cautious would make one a little inflexible, because anyone with a discerning eye could see that Go Sheng was bragging. Boss, the envoy said. Bet with him. Jun Changshao's arrogant appearance really made people feel very uncomfortable. Humph. The envoy sneered. This kind of arrogant person will only realize his own insignificance when he experiences failure. The envoy thought about it again and said, You can try to break the array that isolates the upper level, but if you dare to escape, you'll have to bear the consequences. Don't worry. Jun Chang smiled and said, Everyone here is talented, and their words are pleasant to hear. How could I escape from prison? The envoy did not say anything else, and got up to leave. However, before he left, he ordered the people on duty to monitor Jun Changshao all day long. If he did anything illegal, they must inform him immediately and take corresponding countermeasures. If that was the case, why did he agree to let him break the array? From the 1st level to the 9th level, and with 2 spirit seeds in his body, he was definitely a talent. The envoy wanted to see if he had any attainments in arrays. Not to mention, for now, although Jun Changshao was the main culprit of the 9th level, he had not committed any major crimes. Being locked up in hell was nothing more than fighting in the city, and there was no need to evaluate the level of danger. The main culprits in the 9th level of hell all had a rating, but because Go Sheng became the final existence in the challenge, he was definitely the first special existence in history that did not have a rating of danger. If the system knew, it would definitely complain again. If this guy really caused trouble, the level of danger could not be represented by a... It had to be specially designed by the reader. How do I break the array? Jun Changshao sat down and began to think seriously. Because he was being watched, he could not take out the space-time worm and bite it. So if he wanted to break the array, he could only rely on his own wisdom. Elder Jin once said that. Jun Changshao thought to himself, any formation formed by formations and lines, no matter how perfect it is, will have a flaw. As long as I can find it, I can easily break it. Shua. Thinking of this, he floated to his feet. Everything that had happened during this period of time had left a deep impression on him. He was a dual cultivator of sword and martial arts, but he had neglected the fact that he also knew about formations. The main reason was that he was usually lazy and left the work to others. Ta. Jun Changshao stopped at the center of the 9 layers of hell. His powerful soul power immediately surged towards the spatial barrier created by the void eye. Whoosh, he touched it slightly and penetrated it. Jun Changshao asked in surprise, "Is it that simple?" The formation system had been bombarded countless times by the giant eyeball monster, but it hadn't cracked in the slightest. Yet his soul had easily fused into it. It was simply too inconceivable. However, a mere second later, Jun Changshao's expression changed. At this moment, he had fused his soul body into the defensive formation system. The scene that appeared was that of endless lines. They crisscrossed or surrounded one formation after another. It was even more complicated than a chessboard. If the defensive system was compared to a world, Jun Changshao felt that he was like a grain of sand. No, it's too complicated. Even if we call Elder Zhen and Xi and Yao over, they might not be able to break it. Jun Changshao was still bragging arrogantly just now, but after seeing the complicated prison defense system, he immediately withered. "Sigh," the system said, "let's use a cheat." "It's impossible to use a cheat," Jun Changshao said seriously. "I need to prove myself." Next, Jun Changshao used the time to thinking about how to break the formation, how to go up and take the 9 great martial emperors away. The system was speechless. Even if you break it and gather them all, without using the time and space worm, how are you going to leave the 9 layers of hell? Don't forget, this is only a prison. There are still city defenses outside. "I've already thought about it," Jun Changshao said. "Use the teleportation gate of the dimensional battlefield to first sneak into the dimensional battlefield. Then use the green flower to break through the barrier of the Soul Race's continent and return to the Falling Star continent through the space-time tunnel created by the pillar." Damn, the system blurted out. This kind of prison escape idea was simply too amazing. No wonder when the hosts came to the Starry Sky Fortress, you brought the teleportation gate in advance. So you already had a plan, the system said. No, Jun Changshao shook his head. I brought the teleportation gate out because I thought that if I encountered any trouble, I could hide in the dimensional battlefield in time. I didn't think about using it to break out of prison. The system was convinced. As long as the dimensional battlefield teleportation gate was set up, it could immediately form an entrance. The host could completely ignore the defense system. Stepping into it was equivalent to stepping into another world. It was the best way to break out of prison. However, the prerequisite, using the teleportation gate, will create a whirlpool entrance. The host will be discovered before he steps out. So you need to think of a way to cover it up and not be discovered for a long time. Host, you've changed. How have I changed? Given your character, if you were bullied and locked up in prison, you would definitely think of a way to make a scene. Now your mind is filled with thoughts of how to escape. Damn, Jun Changshao roared. I also want to make a scene, but there are still 11 guys as strong as the big guy just now. Even if I use all my trump cards, I might not be able to win. Furthermore, there was still the fortress owner. So, the system said, the host has also grown. You are no longer rash in a passive situation. Instead, you are starting to use your brain to consider problems. I didn't use my brain to consider in the past. Did you? Jun Changshao had a plan to break out of prison. What was left was to think of a way to break the array that connected to the upper level. Therefore, after a few days of serious consideration, he made up his mind to open the high-level store. The system was speechless. Clearly, he had said that he would rely on himself. In the end, after thinking for a long time, he was thinking about whether to use his current contribution points to try his luck and find a way to break the array. If there is no other way, I will break out of prison first and change my identity to fight again. Then, I will take the 9 great martial emperors away, Jun Changshao said. The system said, the host's imagination is getting bigger and bigger. Sect of all times. In the main hall of the Ironbone Peak. Just as Jun Changshao was thinking about how to break out of prison, Yuan Gongzi, Elder Wei, Ding Xingwang, and the other upper echelons of the sect gathered together. Elder Ge said worriedly, Elder Jiang has been going to the Southern Sea Crossing State for a while, and there is still no news. Will there be any accidents? With Hall Master Z and the others following him, it shouldn't be, right? Elder Jin said. After Jun Changshao left the Falling Star continent, in order to find his sister, Jiangye finally decided to go to the Southern Sea Crossing State. Accompanying him were the Purple King, Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen and He Wudi. Now that a few months had passed, and there was no news at all, it really worried everyone. Sigh. Yuan Gongzi shook his head and said, "If I had known, I would have waited for the patriarch to come back and let him look for her." Elder Wei said, "If everything is settled by the patriarch, what is the point of having us?" Yuan Gongzi was silent. Elder Wei said, "The strength of the sect does not depend on the patriarch alone, but on the strength of the entire sect. When disciples go out to train, it is inevitable that they will encounter trouble, so the most important thing to do is to rely on oneself." Hall Master Wei is right. Ding Xingwang agreed. These two experienced old men were not saying that they would not help their disciples if they were in danger, but that they could not rely on the patriarch for everything. There is news. At this moment, Li Luochia strode over and said, "There is news from the Southern Sea Crossing State. Elder Jiang and the others have been besieged by the local sections. The Drizzle Hall's intelligence network has already spread to the Southern Sea Crossing State." Yuan Gongzi was surprised. Li Luochio explained. "The news was sent by Yi Xingchen's eagle." "I see." Everyone was enlightened. Speaking of Anyo's blue sky jade carving, everyone was actually quite envious. After all, it was very difficult for ordinary people to own a flying beast. Li Luochio said, "Please report that Elder Zhang's sister may have been found, but because of a conflict with the local forces, she can't get out for the time being. She needs the sect's help as soon as possible." Everyone looked at each other. Although they all had positions, and even had the right to support the patriarch, but they did not have the right to mobilize the sect. Elder Wei said, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and send people." Although this experienced lover's realm was not the highest in the sect, he was definitely the most prestigious. Inform the eldest disciple, the second disciple, and the others. Inform Hall Master Shui of the War Cavalry Hall. Inform Vice Hall Master Elder Nyo of the Spirit Beast Hall, to dispatch flying beasts that can cross the sea. Orders were sent out from the sect's main hall. That day, the high-level figures and core disciples of the sect began to move out. Even the 4 elite battle groups of War Cavalry Peak were dispatched. Senior Apprentice Sister Lu, Yao Minjing excitedly said, "We are going to fight." At first, the high-level figures of the sect did not plan on letting her go, but they couldn't resist pestering her, so they could only agree. Yao Minjing had the innate demon body, and was not accepted by the world. But with the sect of all times' current strength, even if news of this spread throughout the continent, there would not be any righteous sects that dared to cause trouble. "Let's go. Poochie, Poochie." Flying beasts flapped their wings, carrying the disciples of the sect of all times towards the South Sea. At the very front was Xiao Maxian in her true form, carrying little Long Long and Peppa on her back. They were Jun Changxiao's contract beasts, and were also part of the sect of all times. Now that Jiangye and the others were in trouble, they would naturally go to help. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Suddenly, the sound of a rooster crowing echoed through the skies. The rooster that was normally responsible for crowing, and had the bloodline of the vermilion bird, was waving its 2 large wings as it chased after them. Its speed not inferior to Xiao Maxian's. As for what sort of trouble Jiangye and the others were in, it was still unknown. But as soon as the sect of all times obtained news, they immediately sent out all of their elites. Who knew? Would the local influences of the South Sea Crossing State be able to withstand this? Big Idiot Black. Sitting at the highest point of Ironbone Peak, White Rakshasa said, "The sect seems to be moving. Should we help?" Black Rakshasa shook his head. "We only need to protect the Falling Star continent. This sort of trivial matter can be left to them." "All right." White Rakshasa no longer spoke. If Jun Changxiao was in the sect, he definitely wouldn't have allowed them to go. After all, this rescue mission to the South Sea Crossing State was a trial for the sect. Sending 2 fathers over was the same as announcing the death sentence of the other party. The sect of all times was the first and foremost principle. Never convince others with martial prowess, only with virtue. Chapter 1266. South Sea State. The Purple King was wearing clothes that would never be worn out. He crossed his arms and hung above the mountains, exuding an aura of disdain. Although this Tao Hua Kuan from the upper realm, who dared to steal dragon eggs, had not recovered to its peak, the aura of a king around him was getting stronger. On the mountain peak ahead, there were 7 old men dressed in the same uniform standing there. They were the 7 grand elders of the Qixing Palace, and their strength was at the level of Wuxia. As for the Qixing Palace, it was the strongest sect in the South Sea State, and its status was equivalent to the mainland's Taishan Shenzong. Are you guys fighting one-on-one? Or a group fight? The Purple King said proudly. His tone was as if he was saying that he was not afraid of one-on-one fights. The 7 grand elders' faces turned gloomy. They had been cultivating in seclusion for a long time, and did not care about worldly affairs. But some time ago, a few outsiders suddenly appeared in the Du State. They were extremely flamboyant, and made enemies with many sects, so they came out of seclusion. Sure enough, they were very arrogant. Kid, a grand elder said coldly, our Qixing Palace is mainly proficient in formations. When we fight, we always fight together. TSK. The Purple King said, let's fight together. Don't find excuses. Anger appeared on the faces of the 7 elders. Come. The Purple King waved his hand and said, come at me together. This guy was really not afraid of being beaten up by a group. Since he came to the Falling Star continent, he had always been fighting alone. Especially after joining the sect of all times, the situation was getting worse. There was no choice. Who asked Hall Master Z to be so thick-skinned? For someone like him, if he did not fight alone, it would be meaningless to live. The 7 grand elders had not seen such an arrogant guy for a long time. Anger rose in their bodies. Then, they looked at each other, and turned into streams of light and rushed over. From the order of their actions, it was obvious that there was some kind of formation mystery. Hall Master Z's lips curled into a disdainful smile. Some time ago, he sparred with the disciples who used the square heaven and earth formation every day. Although he could not hold on when there were too many people, he still had rich clinical experience. You want to play this trick with me? Unless your combined array formation is stronger than my sect of all times. Even though Hall Master Z had always emphasized that she had become a member of the sect, because she and Jun Changshao were using each other, deep down, she had already approved of it. After all, she had completely fallen in love with Lu Wansher's food. He and Yi Xingqian in the Imagination Trio were both representatives of the Tsundra type. They were both stubborn types. Swish, swish. The 7 grand elders flew over and quickly surrounded the Purple King. Then, they operated the array and immediately formed layers of flowing light barriers. Hoo-hoo! A gust of wind rose between the sky and the earth, and dense spiritual energy spread out wantonly. The Purple King didn't move an inch from beginning to end. Only when he was trapped in the formation did he slowly take off his clothes and put on his exclusive divine weapon, Hellish Fury, on his fists. With his current strength, he would have no problem fighting 7 Wusheng. However, since the other party had formed a formation, he had to take it seriously. The 7 grand elders were on the verge of collapse. They could still tolerate this guy taking off his clothes when fighting, but when he wore red underwear and a pair of pink gloves, they really couldn't tolerate it. Therefore, the 7 grand elders, who were originally serious, said in unison with a ferocious expression, "You're a pervert." Boom. Suddenly, the Purple King punched out, causing the barrier to tremble violently. That's right. I'm a pervert. Hall Master Z wasn't human. He didn't care about what the world thought of him. Therefore, he didn't feel any psychological pressure while wearing pink gloves. If it was Go Sheng, perhaps he would really do it. After all, everyone knew that he was shameless. The 7 grand elders' expressions changed. The other party's seemingly ordinary punch was able to shake the barrier of their formation. His strength was much stronger than they imagined. Everyone, one of the grand elders said in a deep voice, make your move. Hoo hoo hoo. Hoo 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 hoo. In an instant, The spiritual energy inside the formation exploded, and then it condensed into illusions that ruthlessly pressed forward. Come! The Purple King roared furiously. Fight to the end! Because of the incompetent roar title, his roar directly shattered the dozens of illusions that were approaching him. The 7 Grand Elders were shocked. This was the first time they had seen such a powerful attack that contained such a powerful sound. Boom! 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 Within the combination formation, the Purple King fully unleashed his strength, and a wonderful battle unfolded. The camera also turned to the distance, toward an area with dust and craters everywhere. Boom! 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 The violent spiritual energy bombarded like cannonballs, and the ripples from the aftershocks rippled crazily, constantly destroying the surrounding space and environment. The ones attacking were dozens of Wu Huang and half-saint level experts. They stood in different positions, and all kinds of energy converged on one point to bombard it. After bombarding for a while, they finally stopped panting. Hoo-hoo! A cold wind blew, blowing away the dust and spiritual energy in the bombardment area. The first thing that came into view was a golden shield that emitted a heavy aura, surrounded by a materialized barrier. The shield was Xiao Ziji's. At this moment he was standing proudly next to it. Yi Xingqian and He Wudi were also there. The two of them held their hands and floated in the air. One was cold and arrogant, and the other was calm and indifferent. The dozens of martial artists' expressions became interesting. They had attacked together for such a long time, but they still couldn't break the defensive barrier set up by the other side. This was really a blow to their self-esteem. Junior brothers, Xiao Ziji said. I'll hold them back. You two go and help Elder Jiang. No need. Yi Xingqian stepped out of the defense area, took out the wine gourd at his waist, and said indifferently, Leave this trash to me. Okay, junior brother. When Xiao Ziji said this, he had already flown far away with He Wudi. As for the defensive barrier behind Anyo, it had disappeared. Damn! Aren't you guys leaving too quickly? Go! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The dozens of martial artists immediately launched the second round of attacks. Dazzling energy came from all directions. Death parting. Jun Changshao threw the wine gourd up and shouted, Sacrifice to the heavens. Woohoo! The white jade gourd in the air flashed and then expanded rapidly. The mouth of the gourd rotated and absorbed all the energy that came from all directions. The dozens of martial artists were instantly dumbfounded. Woohoo! At this moment, the huge wine gourd faced the place with the most people and suddenly spewed out all the energy that it had just absorbed. Not good. Dodge quickly. Boom, boom, boom. Although the dozens of martial artists reacted quickly, they couldn't dodge in time. They were instantly hit by the energy that they released and fell down like kites with their strings cut. Trash. Yi Xingqian said indifferently. His personal divine weapon, death parting, had the first form of a wine jar and was mainly used to behead people. The second form of the gourd could absorb all the energy and then control it to attack others. Whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, the reinforcements from the various sects in due state flew over. There were close to 10,000 martial artists who couldn't fly on the road. Mo Wuji did not know what Demon King Zisu and the others had done to cause them to be collectively targeted. Go! One of the upper echelons shouted angrily. Swish! 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 Wu Huang, class experts from various sects in due state flew over and surrounded Yi Xingqian in 3 layers. This number of people, and this lineup was a little daunting. Yi Xingqian might be proud and aloof, but he still felt a little guilty at this moment. After all, these people were too. Junior brother. Suddenly, a voice came from the sky. We are here. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The core disciples of the sect of all times, led by Li Qingyang, flew over at an extremely fast speed. That kind of unyielding aura was like dark clouds pressing down. Junior brother. We are here. Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, 7 Fields, and the others shouted in unison. Their voices seemed to be able to shake the mountains and rivers. Yi Xingqian was startled. When he was in danger, there was a group of fellow disciples coming to help him. That kind of feeling was really good. Gradually, Night Emperor's lips curled up into a smile. Huff! Huff. Boundless spiritual energy shrouded his entire body. With the scene of his fellow disciples coming to help him, he looked up at the sky and shouted, "I am no longer alone." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless 7 mystic rays burst out and blasted away all the enemies surrounding Yi Xingchen. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Li Qingyang, Su Xiaoma, and the others flew over one after another and stood behind our Neo in various hovering postures. At that moment, the explosive momentum seemed to be able to break through the 9 heavens. Chapter 1267. Jun Changshao had been to the East Sea Fishing State and the West Sea Spiritual State, but he hadn't been to the South Sea Dew State. However, today, the core disciples led by Li Qingyang carried the banner of the Patriarch and appeared in this mysterious and strange land. "Junior brother, we're here." The shouts from the crowd seemed to shake the heavens and the earth, shaking the mountains and rivers. Who are they? Seeing the streaks of light flying toward them like arrows, the masters of the various sects were shocked. They had mobilized almost all the disciples of the Wu Huang sect to deal with these outsiders, but they only had a little over 100 people. Now there were at least 300 people flying toward them from the sky. Streaks of light and afterimages were left behind in the sky, bringing an extremely powerful visual experience to the onlookers. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Li Qingyang and the others flew to Yi Xingchen. The powerful aura around them made the masters of the South Sea Dew State realize that these people were definitely the top of the Wu Huang sect. In the past, the sect of all times was very weak. Facing the invasion of the evil sects in Huayang County, they could only rely on Elder Wei, who had no cultivation base. But now, the sect of all times was very powerful, because all the core disciples were at the peak of the Wu Huang sect, and there were even many martial kings in the sect. The sects of the South Sea Dew State? Sorry, even if you add the martial king Wu Huang sect, you still can't beat them. What was the foundation? Hundreds of Wu Huang sect disciples hovered in front of Night Emperor, looking at the masters of the South Sea Dew State with arrogance, indifference, and disdain. This was the most powerful foundation of a sect. The ninth-rate sect, which was once despised by the world, gradually evolved from a dilapidated room to a magnificent one. At first, there was only one sect master, but now, all kinds of disciples were gathered. They were all growing and becoming stronger, although the process took a long time, and it took 1,000 chapters. Sect Master Wang, if you can see me in heaven, please take a look. These disciples are inheriting your principle of being a man of steel and doing things of steel. They are fighting against all the sects of a large overseas state. When the disciples of the sect of all times flew over and gradually gathered in the sky, they emitted an unyielding aura. The experts of the Southern Sea Crossing State were scared silly. After all, this lineup was too terrifying. Retreat? Was it too late? Boom. Right at this moment, an earth-shaking explosion came from afar. The Purple King, who was wearing only red underwear, flew out from the billowing shockwaves. His purple hair fluttered in the wind as hell rage gathered a powerful force. Puff! Pooh! The 7 grand elders of the Qixing Palace were scattered in different positions and could not suppress the boiling blood in their bodies from spurting out. Their combined formation was very powerful, but in the end, it was unable to resist the battle-hardened the Purple King and was destroyed by his absolute strength. However, what shocked the 7 of them was that a young man shrouded in flames suddenly appeared in their field of vision. He raised his claws that were similar to those of a ferocious beast and coldly said, "Dry and clumsy, not round at all. Not good." Boom! One of the Grand Elders did not have time to dodge, and was immediately bombarded by Little Longlong's extremely powerful punch. His entire body was blasted down, and directly smashed into several mountain peaks. The other few people's faces changed greatly. Hee. All of a sudden, a light laughter rang in their ears. Only then did the few Grand Elders realize that a girl about 12 or 13 years old was floating behind them. She gently raised her small hand, and rays of light that resembled feathers appeared out of nowhere. "Let me do it for you guys." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The sky was filled with flying feathers, and streams of light shot out like sharp arrows. Boom, 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 boom. A series of explosions came from the sky. Because the power was too strong, the space began to crack and collapse. Swoosh, swoosh. In the explosion area, the 7 Grand Elders flew out in a sorry state, and then scurried around like headless flies. Obviously, they realized that little Long Long and Xiao Moxian were very strong. Huff, huff. However, just as one of the Grand Elders flew out, a terrifying evil aura suddenly erupted from the sky. The 5 absolute palms ruthlessly pressed down. Boom! The ground suddenly caved in, and dust filled the sky. Ding Xingwang stood at the highest point with his hands behind his back, and said with a cold gaze, "None of you can escape." Yes, the other Grand Elders couldn't escape, because little Long Long, Xiao Moxian, the Ning brothers, Old Ge, and the other higher-ups had already chased after them. Unless they used cheats, there was no way out. The Yin-Yang sect of the Southern Sea Crossing State would never have imagined that because of their call, it would eventually affect all the sects in the state, and eventually lead to a sect of all times. Yin-Yang sect. A sect that cultivated the Yin-Yang sect. According to the continent's hierarchy, it could barely be considered a fifth-rate sect. This sect's cultivation method was very strange. It required a male and female combination. Therefore, every once in a while, they would send people to the continent to find suitable women. Because it wasn't too extreme, the women would also benefit from it. Therefore, not only was it not labeled as an evil sect, but it had also existed in the crossing state for nearly 1,000 years. Some time ago, the Yin-Yang sect brought back dozens of good-looking women from the continent as usual. Before they could distribute them to the disciples, a few unfamiliar martial artists came to ask for them. After all, it was considered a fifth-rate sect. Who could tolerate it when others barged in without permission? Fight. They had to fight. However, they couldn't beat a few strangers at all. The sect was almost torn down. To be able to stay in the crossing state for so long, the Yin-Yang sect must have a good relationship with other sections. Therefore, they hurriedly sent a distress signal and invited many powerhouses to help. However, the strangers were very valiant and beat up all the helpers. This caused the people who were beaten up to continue calling for help. In the end, the matter spread to the entire crossing state. Even the Qixing Palace with a high status was involved. In summary, a small matter fermented into a big matter. As for the strangers who barged into the Yin-Yang sect, they were naturally the Purple King and the others. Their purpose was also Jiangye relying on his essence spirit body to capture a familiar figure that he had been thinking about day and night. Although he had been separated from his sister for a long time, the image of her in his heart would never be erased. Therefore, when he came to the Yin-Yang sect and blasted open the cell wall, he saw the woman curled up in the corner and shivered. He was stunned on the spot, as if he had been struck by lightning. Her hair was disheveled, her face was pale, her eyes were lifeless, and her body was covered in wounds. Jiangye's head exploded, and his mentality collapsed. He gathered violent strength in his right fist, and smashed the rows of buildings in the Yin-Yang sect. Then he walked out of the dust and walked toward the main hall. He said with killing intent, "How dare you hurt my sister? Unforgivable." Xiao Ziji, Yi Xingchen, and the others who followed him were silent. They could see that the poor woman who was locked up in the cell must have been beaten and abused. Her dull eyes indicated that she seemed to be delirious. The Purple King hovered in the air and said indifferently, "There's no need for the Yin-Yang sect to exist. As the Hall Master of the Spirit Beast Hall of the Sect of all times, I declare that it will be destroyed with immediate effect." Back to the present, back to the time when Xiao Ziji and he would abandon Yi Xingchen. In the Yin-Yang sect that had turned into ruins, Jiangye walked out of the dust with a woman in his arms. "Who are you?" "Jiangye. I don't think I know you. Where are you taking me?" "I'm taking you home." "Home? Why are you crying?" Jiangye stopped. He could no longer control his emotions. He hugged his long-lost sister and cried, "God, why are you doing this to me? Brat." Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind him. "You must die for destroying my sect in due state today." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A white-haired old man flew over from the sky. He raised his right hand and gathered a powerful palm print. Boom! The dilapidated Yin-Yang sect was damaged again. Many buildings were instantly turned into dust by the violent airwaves. When everything dissipated, Xiao Ziji stood behind Jiangya with the shield. His feet sank into the ground, and he forced a smile on his face. The old man frowned. This is a grudge between the sect of all times and the Yin-Yang sect. Do you really want to get involved? Yiwudi's voice came from behind. The two of them abandoned Yi Xingchen and came to the Yin-Yang sect to help Elder Jiang, because they were worried that something would happen. As expected, it happened. Sect of all times. The old man said with a cold gaze. How dare a nameless sect come to Du State and behave atrociously? Although he had not been to the mainland for a long time, he knew about the famous sections. As for the sect of all times, he had never heard of it. Nameless sect. Yiwudi said. You're really uninformed. He suddenly stopped talking because the spiritual thoughts he released had captured a large group of his fellow sect members, flying over from afar and attacking the enemies surrounding Yi Xingchen. The white-haired old man also noticed it. His eyes gradually widened, especially when he saw the 7 grand elders of the Qixing Palace being chased and bullied. His heart was in turmoil. Did you see that? Yiwudi said. This is the nameless sect of all times in your eyes. The white-haired old man's mouth twitched violently. It's only been a few decades since I went to the mainland. Since when did a sect like Wu Huang and Demi-Saint Wu Sheng appear everywhere? Buzz! 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 At this moment the ground shook. Dust flew in the distance, as if a storm was coming. The white-haired old man's eyes almost popped out. Because in the dust, thousands of martial artists in fine armor rode on various ferocious beasts armed to the teeth. They were charging over with great momentum. Ready the arrows! Zhongyi shouted. The members of the cavalry of wolves took out arrows from the quiver on their backs and put them on the dragon-tooth bows. Swoosh! 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 Strictly trained hurricane wolves rushed over like the wind. From a bird's-eye view, they looked like a tide. The direction they were heading was the reinforcements of the various sects in Du State. Fuck! What's going on? Retreat, retreat, retreat! In an instant, the martial artists of the various sects turned around and fled in the direction they came from. They were not afraid of the powerful mounts of the sect of all times, nor were they afraid of the excellent equipment. They were afraid that the other party was a martial king. They could accept 100 martial kings, but thousands of martial kings. Who could bear it? Who could bear it? A few of the Qixing Palace's supreme elders who were staggering and fleeing saw the cavalry of war coming over. They cried in their hearts, "Who the hell are they?" The appearance of the cavalry of war's members instantly pushed the sect of all times' momentum to the peak. The martial artists of Du State could only cover their heads and flee. Everyone! Yuan Gongzi stood on the mountain peak. He picked up the loudspeaker given by the patriarch and shouted, "Pay up and we won't kill." For words, he had perfectly inherited Gosheng's style. Pay up and we won't kill. Pay up and we won't kill. The cavalry of war's members also shouted. Their voices were so loud that it seemed to pierce through the sky. With the sect of all times' current strength, they could completely wipe out the sects of Du State in the South Sea. However, they were in the same line after all. There was no need to be so ruthless. In short, this trip across the sea could not be in vain. Did you hear that? Yiwudi retracted his spiritual thoughts and said, "If you pay up now, there's still a chance for reconciliation. Otherwise, you and your sect will end up like the Yin-Yang sect." The white-haired old man's expression was ugly. He was extremely regretful. Why was he here? Why didn't he continue to cultivate in seclusion? Because of the Yin-Yang sect, all the sects of Du State in the South Sea had sent their disciples over. There were as many as 40 to 50,000 of them. At this moment, they were squatting in the open space with their hands on their heads. The fully armed cavalry of war's members rode on their spirit beasts and scattered around, surrounding them. On the mountain peak in the distance, the supreme elders of Qixing Palace and the other sects' higher-ups were panting as they stood on the rocks. Judging from the sweat on their foreheads, they seemed to be very tired. The Purple King, Ding Xingwang, and the others were hovering on the mountain peak, watching coldly. The current situation was that not only were the Du State's disciples surrounded, but the sect's higher-ups could not escape either. Everyone. Yuan Gongzi raised his loudspeaker and said seriously, "The family of my sect's elder was kidnapped by your Du State's sections. They were tortured until they forgot everything. How do you want to settle this score?" Back then at the Demon Emperor's gate, Go Sheng had settled scores with him. Now that it was his turn to settle scores with others, it felt really good. "Friend," a sect leader said with an ugly expression, "it's the Yin Yang sect who bullied your sect's elder's family. It has nothing to do with us. We can't be responsible for this." "Since it has nothing to do with us," Yuan Gongzi said, "why did you send people over? Why did you besiege our sect of all time's disciples?" That sect leader was speechless. They definitely did not do it for the Yin Yang sect, but for the dignity of the Du State sections. In the end, their dignity was not maintained, and they could not return. Yuan Gongzi said lightly, "Since you're involved, you have to be responsible. So please cooperate and hand over your spiritual stones, ores, herbs, and crystal cores. Of course, if you're not worried about the risk, you can choose to refuse." Although his words were polite, anyone could tell that it was a threat. Sure enough, the promoted patriarch of Fu was very similar to Go Sheng's style. After a short silence, the Qixing Palace's grand elders and the sect's higher-ups could only choose to admit defeat and hand over various martial arts resources. Because there were many sects involved, and there were many high-level powerhouses, they obtained a lot of spiritual stones, herbs, and other things. If Jun Changshao, who was far away in the 9th level of hell, knew about this, he would definitely be happy. Everyone. After Yuan Gongzi checked them one by one, he cupped his hands and said, "We'll meet again in the mountains and rivers. Let's meet again in the martial arts world. Let's go." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The members of the war cavalry hall left first. The Purple King and the others also left one after another. After watching them all leave, the Du State's higher-ups said in their hearts, "Goodbye, we'll never see each other again." After the East sees Yu State and the West sees Ling State, the South sees Du State was inevitably visited by the sect of all times. Although the local sects didn't suffer any casualties, they lost a lot of money. They should be glad that Jun Changshao wasn't in the sect. If he brought people here and saw Jiang Ye's family being tortured by the Yin Yang sect, and his disciples besieged, he would definitely bankrupt the sects in the entire state. "Sister." On the way back to the mainland, Jiang Ye said to himself, "The patriarch must have a way to restore your consciousness and memory." However, when he looked down at the woman who was smiling at him foolishly, his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. 9 Transformations Spirit Cleansing Pill? Jun Changshao, who was far away in the Starry Sky Fortress, was sitting on the ground with his legs crossed. His eyes were locked on the newly refreshed advanced shop items. He said to himself, "This kind of medicine that recovers damaged souls doesn't seem to have any effect." Chapter 1268. It's impossible for me to cheat. I need to prove myself. This was what Jun Changshao had said earlier. Now he had secretly pulled out a high-level store. There was no integrity at all. There was no other way. The defense system of the 9th floor of hell was too strong. Jun Changshao regretted giving the holy grade formation potential liquid to Elder Zhen. Otherwise, he might have been able to use it himself. "Stop dreaming," the system said. "Even if the host takes the holy grade potential liquid, he's only an array saint in the falling star continent. The fortress defense system is at least at the array emperor level." It wasn't afraid of being slapped in the face, because it had a very strict scientific basis. Jun Changshao didn't say anything. He browsed through the newly refreshed products and saw the pill called 9 Revolutions Spirit Cleansing Pill at first glance. According to the introduction, this pill could quickly restore one's mind and soul after taking it. "It's useless," Jun Changshao said. "Useless?" the system said. "Are you serious?" "What I mean is, it's useless to me now," Jun Changshao said. A pill that could restore one's soul was definitely awesome. However, he needed something that could help him get out of trouble, and find the 9 great martial emperors. Naturally, he wouldn't consider spending 10,000 contribution points to buy a pill. Continue looking. The system didn't recommend him to buy it. With the limited contribution points, it was indeed not worth it to buy the 9 Revolutions Spirit Cleansing Pill. Jun Changxiao continued to watch, and in the end he collapsed. There were many good things in the refresh products, but there were none that provided immediate combat power. Just buy something and refresh again. As a qualified salesman, the system definitely had the basic qualities. Jun Changxiao's heart ached. However, thinking that the first epic mission had a time limit, and he had to return to the Falling Star continent as soon as possible, he decided to refresh again. Here came the problem. According to the rules, he had to spend money to trigger the refresh condition. What should I buy? Jun Changxiao was in a dilemma. He could spend 10 contribution points to buy a product in the beginner's store and continue to refresh. For a high-level store to refresh twice, it would cost at least 20,000 contribution points. The system said, recommend the host to buy the 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill. Reason? With the host's current level, the opponents you encounter are all at the Martial Emperor level, or even stronger. Once you're injured, it won't just affect your body, it will also affect your soul. Therefore, this kind of elixir is a must-have when you go out and seek death. Jun Changxiao rubbed his chin and said, that makes sense. Furthermore, the system said, based on the host's personality, if he meets an extremely strong opponent that he can't defeat, he will definitely use the stone statue's power. If he consumes it in time before he loses his mind, he might be able to effectively avoid chi deviation. The first reason had tempted Jun Changxiao, and the second reason had tempted him as well. Ding! Host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding! Sect contribution points 6000,010,000. Who? Each refresh and purchase cost 20,000 contribution points. This made Jun Changxiao take a deep breath and say, next time, you must get something good. Ding! Sect contribution points 50,000,010,000. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Unbridled laughter rang out in the 9 hells, and through the light screen, it was transmitted to the ears of the patrolmen who were in charge of surveillance all day long. What's wrong with this guy? Did he drive himself crazy because he couldn't break through the array defense? It's possible. Jun Changxiao had been sitting cross-legged for the past few days, like a monk in meditation. Suddenly, he laughed out loud, and it did indeed feel like he had gone crazy. In fact, every time this kind of unbridled laughter appeared, it meant that he had obtained something good from the store. It was so good that he couldn't control his emotions. Then what did he get? Ding! Host has spent 10,000 contribution points and obtained Qi Men Duanjia's Array Breaking Chapter X1. It has been transferred to the spatial ring. Ding! Sect contribution points 40,000,010,000. Shua. Jun Changxiao's soul entered the spatial ring and held the ancient secret manual that had just appeared in his hands. His eyes were burning as he said, this kind of thing that teaches others how to break through formations is more useful than the formation aptitude liquid. He found it troublesome and tiring to let this guy set up the array, so he would rather hand it over to Elder Zhen. However, if it was to break through the array, then he would be a little interested. The system said, as long as the host is willing to invest, there will definitely be gains. Get out of my way. Jun Changxiao opened the front page, and his blood immediately boiled, because what was written on it, all the formations in the world can be traced, and all of them can be broken through. Therefore, at the end of his life, he created the Qi Men Duanjia's Array Breaking Chapter, and passed it down to future generations. Signed by, Qi Men Formation God. What the heck? To dare to use the name God. This creator was too awesome. Indeed, as written in the secret manual, there was no absolutely perfect formation in the world. As long as one followed the rules of the arrangement, there would eventually be flaws, but how to find them was a skill. The Qi Men Duanjia's array-breaking chapter was divided into 3 levels: beginner, expert, and master, corresponding to different levels of formation systems. Jun Changxiao began to read, and when he finished reading the beginner level, he exclaimed, "What a godly person!" He had taken a lot of formation talent liquid, and had even asked Elder Zhen for advice, so his understanding of formations was not weak. However, after reading the Qi Men Formation God's analysis of the structure and layout of formations, he suddenly felt that what he had learned before was bullshit. Sure enough, there is always someone better than you, Jun Changxiao thought. If I can fully understand the array-breaking chapter, not only will I be able to break through the prison's defense system, but it will also be of great help in the future. Learn. I must learn. Even if it takes time and energy, it doesn't matter. There is a path to the mountain of books, and the sea of learning is boundless. It was rare that Jun Changxiao didn't pursue the power of cheating, but instead, he devoted himself to learning, even forgetting about time and himself. Second brother. In the patrol room, the Mouser looked at the screen and said, "This guy has been sitting there for half a month. Could it be that he is still trying to connect to the next layer of formation?" The ugly emissary said indifferently, "Who in the mortal universe can break this level of formation system? In my opinion, he has already given up and is now sleeping." Puffed. The Mouser covered his mouth and laughed. The ugly emissary almost couldn't help but throw a punch. After all, the other party's laughter was very attractive, but his voice was very masculine. The 9th layer of hell. Jun Changxiao was still sitting cross-legged. His soul had already merged with the formation system on the ceiling, as if his whole body was placed in an intricate chessboard. Flaws. Full of flaws. After seriously studying the entry level of the array-breaking chapter, those complicated formations and lines were all full of flaws. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Jun Changxiao's soul immediately scattered, turning into streams of light that merged with the various formations and lines, and even merged with the projection formation. Half an hour later, Jun Changxiao opened his eyes from his meditative state. Then he got up and flew up. In the end, he easily blended in. Second brother. The Mouser kept staring at the motionless Jun Changxiao on the screen, and said, "How long is this kid going to sleep for? As long as he stays still. Who cares how long he sleeps?" The ugly emissary said. The two of them probably never dreamed that the scene on the screen would be fixed on Jun Changxiao sitting cross-legged. And even the images connecting to the other layers of the prison had been secretly tampered with. Chapter 1269. When he was breaking through the Shifeng suicide tower, Shengguan Xinyao and Jin Dejuan worked together from the inside and outside, spending a lot of brain cells and time to forcefully break through. The defense system of the 9th floor of hell was definitely stronger, but it was broken by Jun Changxiao in just an hour. Did he dare to say that he did not use any cheats? This time, the system could testify that Gosheng did not use any cheats. It was completely done with his own efforts. If he insisted on denying it, he could only blame the Qimen Duanjia's array-breaking chapter for being too awesome and too easy to learn. Moreover, he had only comprehended the entry level. This kind of easy-to-understand array-breaking secret manual is sold for 10,000 contribution points. High-level stores are really conscientious. After connecting to the defense system above, Jun Changxiao thought to himself. The system was speechless. I've always been very conscientious, okay? Bullshit. Jun Changxiao roared in his heart. I spent twice to buy a 7 profound sunglow broken scroll, and you still have the nerve to use the word always? The system was silent for a moment, then said, "This is an accident. If there are a few more accidents, won't I go bankrupt?" Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes. Although he was chatting with the system, in reality, his soul force had been spreading out, searching for the projection array that connected to the 8th floor. The formation system here was divided into defense and surveillance. The former was difficult to break, while the latter was easy to break. Jun Changxiao now needed to forcefully steal the information, and then completely fix the transmission image, so as to not be noticed by the patrol envoy, in order to prevent any accidents from happening. Of course, it couldn't be too long, because it would be exposed in the end. Time is tight. Jun Changshao threw away all distracting thoughts, his soul frantically spreading out, frantically searching for the projection array system of the 8th floor of hell, and finding it before entering. Fortunately, the 9th floor of hell was mainly set in darkness, and Go Sheng's actions happened to be during sleeping time, so the image displayed in the patrol room was always fixed, and did not attract the attention of the ugly emissary and the others. Xiao. Jun Changshao crawled out from the defensive barrier on the ground of the 8th floor of hell. Yifei Xue, who was far away, noticed it immediately. Her eyes were filled with disbelief as she asked, "How did you get up here?" The prison had always been a place where prisoners could only go down and not go up. This guy, who had just been labeled as the main culprit of the 9th level not long ago, was actually able to come up. This was really too surprising. Senior E. Jun Changshao didn't explain. He hurriedly transmitted his voice. "I have a way to leave the 9th floor of hell. Are you coming with me or staying here?" Taking away the 9 great martial emperors was a must. However, it would be best if he could take away the main culprits who possessed valiant strength. "I'm not leaving," Yifei Xue said. Jun Changshao was dumbfounded. In this day and age, were there still people like Zhao Daodu who were unwilling to leave prison because of their feelings for each other? Yifei Xue said, "I've been obsessed with the way of the sword my entire life. Anywhere is fine." Jun Changshao was speechless. This fellow was the same as Zhou Hong, cultivating the sword Dao to the point of almost becoming a lunatic. "Senior E," Jun Changshao said seriously, "although you can cultivate the way of the sword here, it's no different from building a cart behind closed doors. Only by discussing the way of the sword with more like-minded people, and learning the strengths of hundreds of schools, can you achieve greater success." "You're right, but..." Yifei Xue shook his head and said, "How many people in this mortal universe are qualified to discuss the way of the sword with me?" Formless posturing was the most fatal, Jun Changshao said. "Senior E, I'm afraid you haven't been to the Falling Star continent or the Sect of all times. There's a powerhouse there called Yi Xingchen, known as the Supreme of the Sword Dao. His understanding of the way of the sword is far above mine." The system said, "He's starting to persecute on Yo again." Supreme of the Sword Dao? Yifei Xue's eyes burned with passion. What a domineering name! Coincidentally, I'm also going to the Falling Star continent. If Senior E wants to meet Yi Xingchen, I can bring you along, Jun Changshao said. Time was tight, and there was no time to explain. He could only get on the bus first. Sure, Yifei Xue said straightforwardly. This Yi Xingchen was stronger than Jun Changshao. He had to experience it. What he pursued was not victory or defeat, but the way of the sword. Senior, please relax. I'll bring you to a place where it's convenient to escape from prison. Although Yifei Xue was hesitant, he longed to meet a stronger swordsman. He followed the other party's instructions. Suddenly he felt his vision blur. He appeared in the Tianyuan prison pagoda, which corresponded to the 8th floor of the prison he was in. As for the 9th floor, the Eye of the Void was already in place. After being trained by area, it was shivering and crying in a corner. Done. Jun Changshao hurriedly found the 3 emperors, Zhao, Qian and Sun, and kept them in the pagoda. Then, he sat down cross-legged, and continued to communicate with the defense system of the 7th floor. He did not plan to take the other prisoners away for the time being. If he kept everyone on each floor, it would be easy for the fortress to discover. Swoosh. After a while, Jun Changshao merged into the 7th floor of hell. The words "my fate is up to me, not the heavens" allowed the Shang clan ancestor to regain the passion of his youth. Thus, he agreed to escape without any hesitation. Then, he was placed in the 7th floor of the pagoda. The other 3 emperors were also taken away. At this time, another advantage of the Heaven Origin soul-suppressing pagoda appeared. It could be used as a vehicle to store living beings. On the 6th floor, Qin Linran's soul origin was controlled. On the 5th floor, the Wine Demon was placed in the 6th and 5th floor, because he wanted to meet the Supreme of Wine Dao. Senior. In the 4th floor of hell, Jun Changshao said seriously, in the Sect of all times of the Falling Star continent, there's a guy called Yi Xingchen. He's known as the Supreme of Literature Dao, Not only is he proficient in poetry, but he's also proficient in the 4 arts. He can compose a poem in 7 steps and create 300 tang poems. System. Under this guy's persuasion, Yi Xingqian became the king of all trades. Good, Nebula Kid said. I'll meet him. Thus, the main culprit of the 4th floor was also placed in the Heaven Origin Suppressing Pagoda. Iron Marquis on the 3rd floor, Huiyin Yao on the 2nd floor, and Di Ting on the 1st floor were all placed in. Wow, Arya said happily. So many criminals came. Oh my god. Zhao Daoda was shocked. These people are all powerful. They're all top bosses. I'm responsible for looking after them. It must be because of my ancestors. Remember, Jun Changshao said, you can train the 9th and 6th floor as you wish. You can't train the rest. Yes, Arya received the order. After the master left, she came to the 6th floor. She took out her whip, candle, and other tools and walked toward Qin Linran, who was neither male nor female. You, what are you doing? Pa. Qin Linran had handed over his soul origin and was under Jun Changshao's control. Why was he still being tortured? Because he looked too feminine. Gosheng hoped that he could regain the masculinity of a man under Arya's training. Don't say. The effect was obvious. After a short period of whipping, Qin Linran's screams gradually turned from feminine to manly. He believed that with continuous modification, he would completely change. Chapter 1270. The 9 main culprits of the 9 layers of hell were all taken into the Tianyuan prison pagoda by Jun Changshao. Although it seems like they've been temporarily released, it seems like they've just been moved from one prison to another. It doesn't matter where they're locked up anyways, they don't mind a change of environment. Done. After taking Di Ting away, Jun Changshao sighed in relief, then looked up at the defensive barrier and muttered, I'll be able to leave once I break through this barrier, right? Xiao. His soul spread out and entered the defensive system. Damn. When Jun Changshao saw the lines and lines that were much more complicated than the previous few layers of defense he had broken, his expression became interesting. The system answered. The ones host dealt with before were just the gaps between the layers, so they weren't necessarily that strong. But this is the entire prison's defensive system. So of course it won't be that simple. Jun Changshao's expression became serious. If he wants to break through such a complicated defensive system, it'll take a very long time. If he's discovered during that time, he'll be in big trouble. Don't think about it, the system urged. Hurry up and break through it, Sha. Jun Changshao sat down cross-legged and focused on analyzing and calculating. If it were Shangguan Xinyao and Zhen Deshuai, they would have done a thorough analysis of the formation structure and slowly looked for flaws. But Jun Changshao, who learned the formation-breaking chapter of Qimen Duanjia, was different because he directly threw away the unnecessary procedures and started from the most crucial point. 1 day, 2 days. The patrol room. The ugly emissary rubbed his chin. Why are the other layers of hell so quiet? Maybe because they were taught a lesson by that brat. So they've all become obedient, the ugly emissary said while chewing on a carrot. That's true, the ugly emissary nodded. The two of them continued to monitor the situation, completely unaware that Jun Changshao was hiding in a dark corner, madly trying to break through the formation system that connects to the outside world. Tianyuan Prison Pagoda. The atmosphere was so tense that it made people want to cry, because the 2 Shang clan members who were so many generations apart finally met. Bam! Shang Yuhen kneeled on the ground and cried, Esteemed ancestor, please accept the worship of this descendant. The Shang clan ancestor was also a little emotional, but after all, he had been through a lot, so he forcefully suppressed it. He waved his hand and used his spiritual energy to help him up, saying, I already know about what happened in the Tianyuan continent. Child, I've made you suffer. No, Shang Yuhen said sorrowfully. I have failed to protect the continent, failed to protect my people. I have failed the ancestors. I have failed the Shang clan. Although the plane had been saved by the patriarch, he still blamed himself because his father and the direct descendants of the Shang clan had died in battle for their homeland. He was the only one who had survived. Child, The Shang clan ancestor said. You have worked very hard, and even got to know June Patriarch. The Shang clan ancestors in heaven will definitely be happy. Ancestor, the Shang clan ancestor interrupted. Let's talk about June Patriarch. I heard that you've joined his sect? Yes, ancestor, Shang Yuhen said. The Shang clan ancestor said with satisfaction. June Patriarch is not simple. If you can follow him, you will definitely have great achievements in the future. As an emperor who had fought on the battlefield and expanded his territory, he was very good at reading people. Moreover, he had fought from the 1st level to the 9th level. This was a fact that no one could change. Ancestor, Shang Yuhen said. My entrance fee is 10 million spirit stones. Jie, the Shang clan ancestor's expression froze. It was normal to pay an entrance fee to join a sect, but 10 million spirit stones. It was simply, he said in a deep voice. Child, you are too little. Yes, Shang Yuhen said with shame. Patriarch saved ancestor. 10 million spirit stones is indeed too little. So, I want to add another 10 million. You must, the Shang clan ancestor said. Adding another 20 million is not too much. Some people might think that the old man's head had been kicked by a donkey. He actually took the initiative to ask his descendants to give him money. In fact, he knew better than anyone how much potential Jun Changshao had after dealing with the Dark Demon King and the Eye of the Void. My Shang clan descendant will become his disciple. This was definitely a great opportunity. No matter how much money was spent, it was worth it. Child, the Shang clan ancestor said earnestly. You must remember that money is a worldly possession. If you lose it, you can earn it again. A chance to change your fate is something that can only be encountered and not sought. Say it more directly. He raised his head and said. In front of a chance, money is dog shit. If Jun Changshao, who was deciphering the array system, heard this, he would definitely go up and shake hands, saying, Senior Shang is still the one who sees it clearly. It just so happens that I don't lack chances. I just lack some money. Why don't we complement each other? On the 6th level of the prison, Qin Linran was still being tortured by Arya. His screams were already very manly and rough. A man should act like a man. A woman should act like a woman. Neither a man nor a woman. Jun Changshao could not accept this, so he had to forcibly change him. He could only occupy one side and not both. Big sister. Aunt. Great aunt. Qin Linran was being tortured while begging for mercy. From his tone, it could be heard that there was a change after every training. There was a manliness that had experienced the vicissitudes of time. Do you still want to paint your nails? No. Do you still want to use rouge and face powder? No. Do you still want to put on eyeliner? No. Arya nodded in satisfaction and said, I hope you can do what you say. I can do it. Qin Linran raised his hand and said, I can definitely do it. Under the soul whip, he got rid of his bad habits and completely changed his appearance. When he talked to others, he would spread his legs, and his tone and actions became casual. All of this, Jun Changshao did not know because he sat cross-legged in the prison for 5 days, still focusing on deciphering the array. Shua. Another day passed. He suddenly opened his eyes and looked up at the defense barrier with extremely high defense coefficient. He said proudly, No one can trap me. Whoosh, he jumped up and merged into the barrier. Starry Sky Fortress inside the city. A short white-haired old man was walking on the street with his hands behind his back. His turbid eyes flashed with a hint of clarity. A moment later, he came to the city gate and talked to the guard general. Then, he was allowed to leave the Starry Sky Fortress. The soldiers and passers-by did not notice that when the white-haired old man turned around and walked out of the city, the corner of his mouth raised into a smile. Buzz! Buzz! However, he had just taken a few steps when a bell suddenly rang in the city. It was like some kind of alarm. First level alert! The guard general hurriedly shouted. Quickly close the city gate. No one is allowed to go out. Old man! He shouted. You come back first. Whoosh! Before he finished speaking, the white-haired old man who was walking slowly suddenly straightened his back. As if turning into a ray of light, he rushed toward the city gate that was about to close. The guard general's expression changed and shouted, "Stop him!" Boom! Suddenly, a powerful force sounded in the city. It shocked the martial artists. Then, they released their spiritual senses and found that the thick city gate was actually shattered. Damn! Who is so bold? Whoosh! 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 While the passers-by were shocked, void-piercing realm martial artists flew over from 4 directions in the city, and then flew out of the broken city gate. Catch him! You must catch him! In the patrol room, the Z envoy saw the broken city gate through the light screen, and shouted with a ferocious expression. The ugly envoy, the black envoy, and the others had already moved out. The main culprit of the 9 levels of hell was gone. He had escaped. In the endless dark universe, the ancient warship moved forward at a terrifying speed. The old man standing at the bow of the ship tore off his disguise, revealing Jun Changxiao's face. He looked at the fortress that could no longer be seen with the naked eye and said, "When I finish my mission and break through to Martial Emperor, I will come to thank you for your hospitality." The plot of the Starry Sky Fortress had come to an end. It was not the end, just the beginning, because only one of the 12 patrol envoys had been defeated, and the fortress master had not been encountered yet. More importantly, the demolition teams were not in position, and did not explode from the inside out. Jun Changxiao clenched his fists and said with a cold gaze, "When I return as the king, I will dye the sky red with demon blood." Whoosh! Whoosh! Just as he finished his words, several battleships in the direction of the Starry Sky Fortress sped away, and the furious roar of the ugly envoy could be heard. "Brat, even if you run to the ends of the earth, we will still bring you to justice." Fuck. Jun Changxiao was shocked and said with a guilty conscience, "Let's go, let's go." Whoosh! In the drive device, the highest grade spirit stone shone brightly, and the ancient battlefield seemed to jump, leaving the ugly envoy and the others in the dust. They said with despair, "It's actually so fast that we can't even see the tail lights." P.S. The network was cut off last night, and it lasted until today. The maintenance staff checked for a long time, and found that there was a problem with the network cable. They will reconnect the network cable tomorrow morning. Say, who sent the blade along the network cable and destroyed my network cable? Chapter 1271. The performance of the ancient warship was far superior to the warship of the cosmic fortress. Hence, when it sped up, it was so fast that the tail lights could not be seen, and the exhaust fumes could not be smelt. Despicable bastard! The ugly emissary, Mao emissary, and the others were furious. If the master knew that all the main criminals of the 9 hells had escaped, he would definitely be enraged. They would definitely be scolded badly. Pfft! The first emissary, who was in the patrol room, spat out a mouthful of blood when he heard the latest news. After a short moment of suppression, he said angrily, "Inform the other patrol emissaries to return to the fortress immediately. Investigate thoroughly. The main culprits must be caught. Big brother." The first emissary, whose eyes were as cold as a snake, said, "The 9 hells formation system must have been tampered with. That's why the ugly emissary and the others did not notice." The first emissary was angry and blamed himself. "So that bastard could really break it. I was too careless." Although he did not know how the main culprits escaped, he was sure that it had something to do with Jun Changxiao. Jun Changxiao had said that he wanted to break it, and he had agreed to it foolishly. The fortress defense system is extremely strong, but this person could break it so easily. His understanding of formations must be extraordinary. The first emissary frowned. "We have to be more careful when we capture him." "That's right." The first emissary agreed. If he could break formations, he could definitely set up formations. This kind of strong person, who was proficient in formations, was usually the most troublesome. Actually, he was overthinking. Jun Changxiao had just learned how to break formations, and he was not as good as Elder Zhen when it came to setting up formations. Whoosh! In the endless universe, the ancient warship was speeding towards the falling star continent. Jun Changxiao sat in the cockpit, seriously thinking about a problem. The prison had broken through. However, The fortress would not let it go so easily. It would not be surprising if they came looking for him one day. Sigh. Jun Changxiao shook his head. You can't hide forever. That's why. The system said. The host is still not strong enough. If you were as strong as them, you wouldn't have to worry about them coming looking for you. Jun Changxiao could tell that the system was instigating him to spend money again. If there was an inexhaustible supply of contribution points, whoever didn't spend them till the end of the world was a coward. Of course. The system said, don't be too pessimistic. After all, the 9 great martial emperors have already been rescued. They only need to obtain the recognition of the various sects on the falling star continent to become a martial emperor. Isn't that obvious? Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes and said, otherwise, why would I waste so much effort? If it wasn't for Shirxi's mission, he would have gone to the Starry Sky Fortress to buy some herbs to refine the half-saint elixir. Then, he would have inquired about the overall strength of the Starry Sky Fortress before returning. He would never have deliberately gone to jail. The main reason was that they had met a patrol envoy on the way. The lowest was the middle level of the void-piercing tier. And there were still 12 of them. With Jun Changxiao's current strength, which was not even at the lower level, he definitely would not dare to face them head-on. Because if he did, he would have to waste his trump card. And even if he used it, he would definitely win. Right. At the mention of the 9 great martial emperors, Jun Changxiao was puzzled. The people have already been rescued. Why hasn't Shirxi's mission been completed yet? The system said, perhaps the host needs to bring them to the falling star continent to fulfill the conditions. I hope so. Jun Changxiao's heart moved, and he summoned all 9 great martial emperors. The few experts who had been imprisoned for thousands of years had already bathed and changed their clothes in the pagoda of confinement. Their miserable appearance had weakened a lot, and they had regained a little of their kingly demeanor. Seeing that they were on the battleship, surrounded by the endless universe, the 9 great martial emperors immediately realized that they had been rescued, so they all cupped their hands and thanked. Thank you, Jun Patriarch, for saving us. We are all from the falling star continent, so it's only right that we help each other, Jun Changxiao said. With his current strength, he could completely ignore the 9 great martial emperors. But they were still his seniors, so he naturally had to give them enough respect. Moreover, Shirxi's mission was related to them. Jun Changxiao chatted with the 9 great martial emperors for a while, then put his mind on sailing. Because he had left the sect for a few months, he missed his disciples and Lu Wansher's food very much. At the beginning of his transmigration, Go Sheng was unfamiliar with the iron bone and the entire world, and even felt out of place. But as he grew and developed along the way, he had already regarded himself as a citizen of the falling star continent, and the sect of all times as his home that he would never leave. If it weren't for the bombs, Jun Changxiao had to work hard. He was willing to spend every day with his disciples in a simple and unadorned way, until they grew old and passed away. Babies, I miss you so much. In the universe, Jun Changxiao's roar came from the starry sky. The faces of his disciples also flashed across his mind, one by one. There was Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji Yi Xingchen, He Wudi, Lu Qianqian and Lu Wansher. Of course. Jun Changxiao didn't only care about the upper echelons and disciples of the sect, but also his friends from the falling star continent, such as Ai Shangyao, Xie Guangquan, City Lord Han, and Shi Jingxian from Miaohua Palace. Don't forget about your wife. Get lost. Falling star continent. The martial artists in the various provinces and cities were either cultivating or busy as usual. Their days were peaceful as usual. Huff, 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 huff. Suddenly, a powerful aura pressed down from the sky, and heaven and earth trembled violently. Everyone was dumbfounded. The experts of the various sects walked out of their rooms and looked up at the trembling space. This is in Taishian Shengzong Yulinyuan, who had just become the patriarch, walked out of the main hall. Seeing the changes in heaven and earth, he said with a trembling voice, "They're here. They're here. They're back." Who? Back? All the disciples were confused. Swish. At this moment, a red stream of light tore through space and flew out. When the light gradually dissipated, a middle-aged man with a majestic figure was floating in midair with his hands behind his back. He was surrounded by an aura that could swallow mountains and rivers. Huff, 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 huff. The attributes of heaven and earth were affected and started to become excited. Soul Arch, a Taishian Xingzong elder exclaimed. As soon as he said that, the entire sect fell silent. All the disciples widened their eyes and almost stopped breathing. This middle-aged man who made them want to worship him with just one look was one of the legendary 9 great thearchs. Soul Arch. It's Soul Arch. The entire continent was in an uproar. Grandpa Ding, do you know this person? At the entrance of the Sect of All Times cafeteria, Lu Wanshur shook her spoon and asked. Ding Xingwang said solemnly. He's one of the 9 great thearchs, Soul Arch. Oh. Lu Wanshur was stunned in the next second. Then she screamed. 9 great thearchs? Oh my god. Soul Arch. He's Soul Arch. Everyone come out and take a look. When the disciples of the sect heard this, they all raised their heads and looked at the powerhouse with admiration in their eyes. Ha! Yi Xingchen, who had just walked to the training tower, stopped and saw the guy who was posing. He said in disdain, I thought he was dead. Swish, swish. At that moment, Emperor Li, Emperor Tong, and the rest of the 8 great thearchs appeared in everyone's vision. They floated in the air in an irregular pattern. Their majestic and noble aura spread wildly. It was impossible to tell that they had been imprisoned or tortured. Under the vast aura of the thearchs, ordinary people subconsciously knelt down. Every dimension had its strongest representative. The falling star continent's representatives were the 10 great thearchs. Although one of them had died, and there were only 9 left, they were still the people's faith. Today they had returned. Wait a minute. Just as everyone was extremely excited, a discordant stream of light flew over and stopped above the 9 great thearchs. When the light gradually dissipated, a very despicable handsome face appeared. He posed in a very despicable pose and said in a very despicable voice, I've brought the 9 great thearchs back safely. May I ask where the flowers are? Where is the applause? Chapter 1272. The return of the 9 thearchs shocked the world. However, when Jun Changshao made his grand entrance and said something coquettishly, the solemn atmosphere was instantly disrupted, and the whole world became silent. The martial emperors were unfamiliar to the martial artists of the falling star continent because they had seen them before. However, the patriarch of the Sect of All Times, who had madly advertised during the Battle of the Dragons and Tigers, had left a deep impression on them. He was the devil. This was a shameless bastard. What did he say? He brought the martial emperors back? Bah! Bitue. After a short silence, the martial artists of the entire continent despised him. If Jun Changshao was not so far away, rotten eggs and cabbages would have flown up to him. Despicable guy. He's actually standing higher than the 9 thearchs. Is he rebelling? The fans of the 9 thearchs glared angrily. After all, in their hearts, the 9 thearchs were supreme and could not be disrespected. Get down! Get down! Everyone shouted in unison, and their voices echoed in the sky. Not only did he not receive flowers and applause, but he was also cursed by the crowd. This made Jun Changshao break down. You can't blame them. The system said. It's mainly because the host is too coquettish. I can't help but want to curse. Jun Changshao's mood became even worse. Jun Patriarch. At this moment, the Spirit Emperor cupped his hands and said, Thanks to your help, the 9 of us can see the light again. I will always remember this great kindness. His voice contained the power of the Emperor, and it spread across the sky. The fans who were clamoring for Jun Changshao to get off the stage had expressions of disbelief on their faces. Their absolute idol, the Spirit Emperor, one of the 9 thearchs, was actually speaking to that guy in a polite tone. They only heard the politeness and did not see the respectful expression on their faces. Jun Patriarch. The other 8 thearchs cupped their hands and said, Thank you so much. One martial emperor thanking him was nothing, but 9 martial emperors all turned around and thanked him politely and respectfully. The scene in front of the world was quite shocking. Pa! In the sect of all times, Li Tiantian raised the magically modified camera, found the right angle, and pressed the shutter, capturing the scene of the 9 thearchs thanking the patriarch. Henceforth, the sect's image pavilion would have a picture that could be used to show off and brag about for a long time. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the hidden mission, World Shaking. The reward is 50,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points. 90,000/100,000 points. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing the most shocking series of hidden missions in the Falling Star continent. You have received the Supreme Reward Sect Function Upgrade X1. Keep your word X1. It has been transferred to the Space Ring. The 9 great martial emperors all expressed their gratitude before the eyes of the crowd. Just as everyone was shocked, a series of notifications rang out. Jun Changshao understood the upgrade of the Sect's function. But what did he mean by doing what he said? Swish. After fusing with the spatial ring, he realized that the so-called true promise was actually a conch. What the hell? Jun Changshao raised his hand to grab it. However, as soon as he touched it, unfamiliar memories instantly flooded into his mind. He couldn't help but blurt out, "Fuck." The memories that came out of nowhere explained in detail how to use the true promise. As long as he picked it up, put it near his mouth, and shouted the name and reason of the person related to him, the other party would be upgraded by a large realm. The upper limit was Wuxia. Jun Changshao was uncultured. He said again, "Fuck." Although the Martial Master Pill and Martial King Pill were a little mysterious, they still had some medicinal principles. This kind of treasure that could directly upgrade a person's realm with just a sentence was simply against science and the laws of nature. There's nothing strange about it. The system said indifferently, the strongest sect system has already transcended the laws of nature. As long as the host becomes stronger, as long as the system becomes more advanced, the rewards and goods that can be purchased will always be unimaginable. TSK. Jun Changshao said, "That's not the time when I failed to buy the remnant scroll." "Big brother," the system roared, "can you not mention the past? I just can't stand your smugness. Come on, beat me up, let's hurt each other." "Fuck. Do you really think I don't dare?" Therefore, Jun Changshao's hands were on his neck. His face and ears were red, and his breathing was about to stop. The 9 great martial emperors, the martial artists of the Falling Star continent. This scene of oneself fighting with oneself was simply too coquettish. The 9 great martial emperors made a grand return, but the one in the limelight was definitely Jun Changshao. After all, the former was seen as the idol of everyone, but he thanked him in public. Without a doubt, in the following period of time, the 9 great martial emperors, thanking Go Sheng in the sky would become the hottest topic of the day. Of course, many people were very puzzled. What kind of trouble had the 9 great martial emperors, who had disappeared for a long time, encountered? Why were they saved by Jun Changshao? These mysteries were destined to never be solved, because it was too embarrassing to be locked up in the Starry Sky Fortress prison. The Spirit Emperor and the others would definitely not take the initiative to say it. Moreover, the 9 great martial emperors had more or less suffered some internal injuries after being locked up for so long. Therefore, they chose to go into seclusion after thanking Jun Changshao. Even if people mustered up the courage to ask, it was too late. Sect of all times martial arts practice field. Thud. Jun Changshao floated down as the disciples raised their heads in anticipation. Lu Wanshi, who had been waiting for a long time, could no longer control her emotions. She excitedly rushed over and said happily, "Patriarch, you're finally back alive." Jun Changshao's mouth twitched slightly, and he instinctively turned his body to the side. Swoosh. Plop. Ayaya. Because the patriarch dodged very beautifully, Lu Wanshi, who had missed, directly landed on her face. If it was in the past, Jun Changshao might have stood still. After all, this girl was only 11 or 12 years old then. Now that she had turned from a little girl to a girl, he naturally had to deliberately keep his distance. The system said, "Other than the Rose Queen, no other woman in this world can take advantage of Gosheng." Patriarch. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others also surrounded him with bright smiles on their faces. Not bad, not bad. Jun Changxiao glanced at them and nodded. You guys didn't slack off while I was away. Your auras are stronger than before. Patriarch, Li Qingyang said. Elder Jiang found his sister. Oh, Jun Changxiao was rather surprised. That's a joyous occasion. But, Li Qingyang said bitterly, Elder Jiang's sister was forced to take medicine that caused her to lose her rationality and memory. She has already forgotten that she has a long-lost brother. When Jun Changxiao heard that, the smile on his face was instantly replaced by coldness. He said in a low voice, Who did it? He knew how much Jiang Yi cared about his sister. After all, the two of them were almost struck by lightning back then, now that they had found her. But she had lost her rationality and memory. This was definitely a heavy blow. Su Xiaoma said. The Yin-Yang sect of the Southern Sea Crossing State. Motherfucker! Jun Changxiao shouted angrily. Take your weapons and follow me to the Southern Sea Crossing State. We'll flatten this Yin-Yang sect. Chapter 1273. Jun Changxiao sat on the patriarch's seat in the main hall with the plaque, unyielding iron bones. He was so angry that his gums were about to bleed. He roared, Yuan Feng. Yes. Yuan Gongzi stood up in a panic. Why was the patriarch so angry all of a sudden? Was it because he took the initiative to bring people to the Southern Sea Crossing State? But this was Elder Wei's suggestion. Shouldn't he be the one to blame? Am I going to take the blame? Forget it, forget it. I'll take the blame then. After all, I've taken the blame many times in the Demon Emperor's Gate. You. Jun Changxiao pointed at Su Yangyi. It wasn't until he forcefully suppressed the fury in his heart that he completely roared. This time's command was very appropriate. I am very satisfied. The higher-ups of the sect almost fell over. I'm afraid that only my sect master is capable of praising someone with such a tone of admonishment. Yuan Gongzi was stunned. Was the patriarch praising him? Or was he blaming him? Of course, Jun Changxiao was praising him. He was roaring with emotion because that Yin-Yang gate had already been flattened before he had arrived. Jiang Ye's sister was his sister. She was bullied to the point of losing her mind and memory. He couldn't take it anymore. The culprit had been dealt with, and he didn't participate in the whole process. No. I have to go to the Southern Sea Crossing State. Jun Changxiao made up his mind. Of course, it wasn't to extort the Southern Sea Crossing State again. It was to complete Shisan's mission. What was this mission? Within 3 years, promote the sect of all times to a first-rate sect, and obtain the recognition of all the major sects and top powerhouses in the Starfall continent. It wasn't difficult to promote a first-rate sect. The key was to obtain the recognition of the sects and powerhouses. Although the 3 overseas states and the main continent had been separated for thousands of years, they were still part of the same plane. Therefore, Jun Changxiao didn't want to screw up at this crucial moment. He had to go there personally to arrange everything. The system said, with the host's current mood, you'll definitely have to harvest another wave of leaks when you go to the Southern Sea Crossing State. Am I that kind of person? You are. Dragonpine Peak. In a beautiful courtyard, light singing could be heard. The singer was Jiang Ye's sister. Her voice was gentle and melodious. Compared to Jun Changxiao's, it was like heaven and earth. Jiang Ye, who was in the pavilion, was already in tears. The song that his sister sang was a folk song that had been circulating in Jiangzhe town for a long time. When he was young, he loved to listen to it. Every night, he would pester her to sing it until he fell asleep. Her voice was still as beautiful as before, but her sister had forgotten about her and was sitting under the eaves, humming a little tune. That scene. It was very much like when he was a child, lying on her lap, listening to the song and slowly falling asleep. Sis, Jiang Yi said sorrowfully. I'm useless, I couldn't find you in time. Just as Jun Changxiao thought. The loss of his only family member's thoughts and memories was too great a blow to him. So much so that he was constantly blaming himself after his return. Heavens! Jiang Yi stood up and shouted. I'm willing to use my cultivation and life in exchange for my sister's sanity. Clap, clap, clap. Applause suddenly came from behind. Jun Changxiao was sitting on a rock at some point in time. He crossed his legs and clapped. The relationship between siblings is very touching. Patriarch? Jiangye asked in surprise. When did you come back? Jun Changxiao was speechless. The 9 emperors returned and bowed to me in public. He actually didn't see such a big commotion. It seemed that his sister's matter was too big a blow to him. So much so that he ignored everything. Elder Jiang. Jun Changxiao jumped down from the rock and placed a hand on his shoulder. He said, "A real man will not sink into self-blame. Instead, he will think of a way to change an unfair fate. This is the principle that Li Jing taught me." Li Jing? When did I say that? Patriarch. I've heard about your sister's matter. Jun Changxiao opened his hand, and a round pill appeared in his palm. He said, "This pill can restore consciousness and recover damage. Give it to your sister." Jiangye was dumbfounded. After learning that Jiangye's sister's mind was damaged because of the pill, her behavior was sluggish, and she lost her memory, Jun Changxiao immediately thought of the 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill. So he immediately decided to take it out. However, it was still worth 10,000 contribution points. It was really, hurry up. He turned his head, closed his eyes and shouted, "Don't let me see this pill again. I hate it." Whoosh. Jiangye hurriedly took the pill. He didn't have time to thank him. He strode to his sister's side, controlled it with spiritual energy, and threw it into his mouth. A miracle happened. The woman with sluggish eyes had just taken the 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill. Her clear eyes gradually regained their luster. It seemed that her stiff face gradually had expression. The disappeared memories flooded into her mind like a flood. Even her haggard face seemed to be reborn. Jiangye was overjoyed. "Little Xia? Are you little Xia?" The big sister sitting next to him suddenly raised her head to look at him, before asking in a trembling and skeptical voice. Jiangye instantly lost control of his emotions. Large tears rolled down his face. In the end, he hugged the person closest to him and sobbed, "Sister, it's me. I'm little Xia." Amidst this happy and heartwarming scene of siblings reuniting with each other, Jun Changxiao, who was ruining everything, had appeared. At this moment, the expression on his face was quite interesting, because his evil spirit's name was Little Xia. This brat seemed to share the same name. The host can change the Xia of evil to the Yi of Mo Xia, the system suggested. Under the powerful effects of the 9 Revolution Spirit Cleansing Pill, Jiangye's sister, Jiangling, regained her consciousness and regained her memory. The two of them were finally reunited after several decades. To be honest, it was a bit of an overkill. However, Jun Changxiao didn't care at all. The family of his disciples were his family. What did it matter if he spent 10,000 contribution points on them? "I can't." Jun Changxiao clutched his chest and said, "It hurts, Li Fei." There were a lot of things that needed to be said between the two of them. So Goxing didn't want to disturb them. He turned around and left the courtyard. "Wait!" Jiangling hurriedly yelled. Jun Changxiao stopped. "What's the matter, sister? You're the patriarch of the sect of all times?" Jiangling asked in a weak voice. Jiangye was stunned. His sister knew the patriarch. "That's right," Jun Changxiao said in a carefree manner. "I am the patriarch of the sect of all times." "Ah!" Jiangling suddenly pushed her brother away and sprinted over. She shrieked and waved her hands. "It's really Master Jun. I finally see you in person today. You look much more handsome than you do on the light screen." Jun Changxiao's expression became more and more interesting. Could it be that Jiangye's sister was a fan of his? This matter had started when Jun Changxiao had brought his disciples to participate in the dragon and tiger battle for supremacy. At that time, he had frequently appeared on the screens of various cities, madly advertising. Although he had attracted the disdain of many people, he had also gained many fans. Jiangling was one of them. She was even the #1 female fan. She was also the leader of a fan club in a certain city. Her slogan was "Fan of you, crazy for you, love you for life." Ah, she was still screaming. She was so excited that she seemed to pass out at any time. Jun Changxiao touched his head helplessly. Then, he looked at the camera and said, "The author doesn't have any female fans." His expression gradually changed. He smiled and said, "I do." June Patriarch. Why are you bald at such a young age? Chapter 1274. Jiang Ling was captured by the Yin Sect and brought to the South Sea Fairy State recently. A few years ago, she was on the mainland and saw Jun Chengxiao's advertisement on the light screen. At that time, she was an ordinary maid in a big family in a county. Because she changed her identity and name, the Drizzle Hall searched for her, but failed to find any clues. Later, Jiangya gradually comprehended the essence soul and began to look for his sister. She was found and kidnapped by the Yin Sect when she went out to buy groceries. She traveled across the sea for several years before arriving at the South Sea Fairy State. In other words, during the years when Jiangya searched frantically, his sister was actually on the way across the sea. The Yin Sect was not an evil sect in the traditional sense. Although their cultivation method emphasized the balance of yin and yang, it would also benefit both sides. However, to ensure that the beneficiaries would not betray or leak the secret, the captured women had to take soul-destroying drugs and forget themselves and their memories. To put it bluntly, she was completely controlled and turned into a puppet. This was the rule set by the Yin Sect when they chose their cauldrons. All the captured women had to go through it. Jiang Ling was beaten several times because she did not compromise and resisted. Of course, the drugs needed some time to take effect. Therefore, when Jiangya arrived, she had not been assigned to a disciple and had not been sullied. However, because of the drugs, her soul and mind were damaged, and she almost became demented. For others, the damage to the soul might be irreversible, but it could be reversed easily in front of a cheat. Therefore, a 9-transformation spirit refreshing pill immediately recovered Jiang Ling's soul and mind. In the main hall, Jun Chengxiao's head was about to explode. Although Elder Jiang's sister had recovered, she would always squat on the path he had to pass and scream, crazy for you, forever in love with you." At first, Go Sheng enjoyed it. After all, he finally met a female fan. However, as time passed, he could not stand it anymore. It was mainly because she was too passionate. The most depressed one was Jiangya. It was not easy to find his long-lost sister. They should have chatted happily and increased their affection for each other. However, as soon as they talked about the patriarch. They admired him to the extreme. "Little Xia, does Jun Patriarch have a girlfriend? Little Xia, what hobbies does Jun Patriarch have? Little Xia, Jun Patriarch. Sis." Jiangya hugged his head and broke down. "The patriarch not only has a girlfriend, but he also has a wife. You're already in your 50s or 60s. Can you not be as childish as a little girl?" Coincidentally, Jun Chengxiao was passing by. When he heard what he said, he almost stumbled and fell to the ground. In a world where the average lifespan was 200 years, 50 to 60 years old was very young. However, in Go Sheng's previous world, she was already an auntie who had begun to dance in the public square. That's right. The system sharply ridiculed. Even if the host has fans, they're only at the level of a mother, because young girls all like cool and handsome men like Yi Xingchen. Who would like a shameless person like him? Because the words were too true and cruel, they seemed to have turned into a dagger, ruthlessly stabbing Jun Chengxiao in the heart, causing him to ferociously clutch his chest. "Elder Jiang." In the study, Jun Chengxiao said seriously, "Are you sure you want our sister to live in the Iron Bone town and not become a member of the sect?" Jiangya said, "Patriarch, my sister's aptitude is ordinary. That's not a problem." Jun Chengxiao interlocked his fingers and said, "I can make her have the aptitude of the holy level immediately." After all, Jiangya was the first appointed elder. His sister was his sister. If she was willing to become a member of the sect, it would not be a problem to give her the aptitude package. The contribution points did not allow him to upgrade all the disciples' aptitudes to the holy level, but he could upgrade one person. This, Jiangya thought for a moment and said, "I'll ask my sister." After learning the situation, Jiang Ling shook her head and said, "Little Xia, I'm not cut out for martial arts. You'd better settle me down in the town at the foot of the mountain." After learning that Jun Chengxiao had a wife, she gradually calmed down from her fanaticism and began to think about her future life. Jiang Ling was actually the same as Sister Qiao Er. They were the most ordinary people. They preferred to live an ordinary life, rather than pursue martial arts. Sister, Jiang Ye said, I understand. The next day, accompanied by her brother, Jiang Ling left the sect of all times and settled down in the Iron Bone town. She was hired by Aunt Wang to take care of the increasingly popular Yunlaian, because second young Master Tang had built the Tang's elixir workshop here and was responsible for selling healing elixirs and other elixirs. He would attract countless customers every day. Therefore, Yunlaian's business was also very good. Aunt Wang was inspired by a chat with Jun Changshao. Under the name of Wang's Chain Inn, she developed in Qingyang town and even Qingyang city. Today, there were more than 10 chain stores of various sizes. Moreover, there were signs of expansion in Liang City, Huyang City, and other places. Aunt Wang, Jun Changshao joked, you're going to be an tycoon in the future. Aunt Wang walked out of the kitchen and placed a bowl of noodles in front of him. She said grumpily, why do you, the leader of a sect, always come to my place to eat and drink? It's delicious. Jun Changshao picked up his chopsticks and smiled. Aunt Wang, give me a scallion. Although Gosheng did not have any blood relatives in this world, the villagers of Qingyang village were all his family. Therefore, every time he came to Ironbone town he felt very warm. Plop! In Jun Changxiao's study, Jiang Ye bent his knees and knelt firmly on the ground, saying, Thank you, Patriarch. Bang! In the next second, the window shattered and he flew out. Then, he slid on the ground for dozens of feet, before coming to a stop. Jun Changxiao stood in the study and said calmly, A man has gold under his knees. If you dare to kneel again, no matter if you're an elder or a disciple, you'll be sent to the discipline hall for punishment. Understood, Jiang Ye said with difficulty. The return of the patriarch was a joyous occasion. Therefore, in these few days, the entire sect was filled with a joyous atmosphere. But the only one who was not happy was Shang Yuhen, because at this moment, he was trembling in front of the goal. In front of him stood Su Xiaoma, Li Fei, Tianqi and the others. Junior brother. Su Xiaoma smiled. Guarding the goal is a compulsory course for all disciples. It's also the culture of the sect of all times. Just relax and don't be too nervous. Shang Yuhen was about to cry. During this period, he had seen his senior brother play football. It was simply too cruel. Bang! Just as Shang Yuhen was thinking, the happy football hit his face. After leaving a mark on the ball, it bounced back and landed at Li Fei's feet. Swoosh! He shoveled with his foot, and the ball rose. Whoosh whoosh! His whole body rose into the air and hung upside down. Boundless spiritual energy poured into his feet. The scene seemed to freeze in an instant. On the screen, a few shocking crimson words appeared: super kill. Little Li Fei's feet. No. Rumble. A violent gust of wind burst out, and the goal disappeared. Not long after, there was a new patient in Medical Peak's medical hall. Jun Patriarch. In the main hall, Yi Feishue, Nebula Kid and the others sat down. Finally, they could not help but ask, where is the Yi Xingqian that was mentioned before? Chapter 1275. Boom! Boom! Inside the life and death secret realm, a powerful spirit power exploded, shaking the space. Spirit beasts were killed by the fist shadows one after another, until they all disappeared. Yi Xingqian stopped, sweating profusely. He had reached the peak of Wu Huang long ago, and the training in the life and death secret realm had almost no effect. However, in order to improve even a little bit, he still tortured himself. Since his rebirth, Yi Xingqian had been strict with his training, shaping his body, soul and attributes. Although he had yet to reach the level of cultivation he had in his previous life, his current strength had already far surpassed those of the same realm back then. In fact, he could even be described as being miles ahead. Anyo explained that success was not only about innate talent, but also about hard work. However, Gosheng explained that success was that it did not matter if he did not work hard, because he could still cheat. Of course, it was not that Jun Changxiao did not want to work hard, but as the leader of a martial school, he was destined not to live for himself. He was destined to sacrifice for the whole martial school. Gosheng felt bitter. But Gosheng did not say anything. Phew. After a short rest, Yi Xingchen walked out of the life and death secret realm. Just as he was about to enter the Nine Heavens secret realm, Jun Changxiao's voice came into his ears. "Anyo, come to the palace." Yi Xingchen frowned slightly, and a trace of uneasiness rose in his heart. The patriarch's call as a disciple, he had to go. Therefore, after a slight hesitation, he went to the palace. However, as soon as he walked in, he felt a few pairs of eyes on him. The powerful aura could be described as shocking. Expert. Expert. Yi Xingchen suppressed his shock and looked over. He found 3 powerful warriors sitting in the front seats. One had 9 swords on the table, one was full of alcohol, and the last one was holding a pen. "Everyone," Jun Changxiao said. "This is Yi Xingchen, the disciple I value the most." If it were Li Qingyang and Xiao Ziji, they would definitely feel comfortable when they heard the words most important. But the uneasiness in Night Emperor's heart grew stronger. Yi Feishue, Wine Demon, and Nebula Kid carefully sized up this disciple of the sect of all times. The more they looked at him, the more they felt that he wasn't very powerful. Could he really be worthy of the title Supreme? "Xingchen," Jun Changxiao said. "These 3 would like to consult with you." "Sure," Yi Xingchen said proudly. Although he felt uneasy and knew that the 3 of them were not simple, Night Emperor's pride and dignity were still there. He would not be afraid. In the cafeteria, Yi Xingchen, who had been incomparably arrogant just a moment ago, now had a very interesting expression on his face. This was because this guy who reeked of alcohol was actually asking for advice on a drinking contest. No way. How could this be? Anyo was instantly terrified. He sent a telepathic message. "Patriarch, I said that you are the supreme of the path of wine. You have to back up this boast." Jun Changxiao sent a telepathic message in all seriousness. "Jie." Yi Xingchen's facial muscles instantly stiffened. "Don't you know how much alcohol I can hold? How dare you say that you are the supreme of the path of wine? Are you bragging or are you purposely tricking me?" "Friend." Wine Demon placed one leg on the chair and said boldly, "Shall we brag to the jar or drink from the bowl?" Yi Xingchen had no choice but to brace himself. However, it was definitely not realistic to brag to the jar, and his strength did not allow him to do so. Hence he said, "Bowl. 1 black, 2 black." Jun Changxiao snapped his fingers and said, "Serve the bowls." "Yes." 1 black, 2 black walked up and placed 2 bowls on the table. Yi Xingchen's eyes widened. This was because the size of the bowl was the same as the wash basin. "Patriarch," he said frantically, "when did the cafeteria have such big bowls? Why haven't I seen them before?" "I just asked someone to go down the mountain and buy them," Jun Changxiao said. Yi Xingchen's mouth suddenly twitched. "Tricked me. Definitely tricked me." Swoosh. 1 black and 2 black were responsible for filling the wine. Wine Demon salivated when he smelled the fragrance of the wine. Then he raised the bowl and said, "I'll drink first as a toast." Gulp gulp. After saying that, he raised his head and drank freely. "Damn." Su Xiaoma and the others who were standing outside the cafeteria said in disbelief, "So fierce?" Yi Xingchen's expression changed again and again. "Pa." Wine Demon put down the empty bowl and said with a fist and palm salute, "Please enlighten me." As soon as he finished speaking, his head hit the ground and he passed out drunk. "Ptaha. I thought that guy was very powerful." So he passed out after 1 bowl. Su Xiaoma and the others roared with laughter. Jun Changxiao was puzzled. When they were drinking in hell, this guy drank a jar. Although the bowl was bigger this time, he shouldn't have passed out directly. "Patriarch," Long Kong said. He drank the improved version of drunken and dreamy 2nd generation. The effect of absorbing spiritual energy is stronger, and the alcohol is stronger. Jun Changxiao said in realization, "I see. Both of you." He looked at Yi Feishue and Nebula Kid who were acting as the judges and said loudly, "This is the special brew of our sect of all times. The disciples usually drink it like water." Wine Demon drank 1 bowl and passed out. The winner should be decided, right? "It is." Yi Feishue cupped his fist and said, "Your disciple won." Yi Xingchen almost fell over. He won without drinking the wine. What kind of competition is this? Can you be more professional? Can you respect me? Night Emperor's anger suddenly surged up. He lifted the basin-sized bowl and gulped it down. His face was flushed red as he stood up shakily and roared. I can still drink. Jun Changxiao opened his mouth in surprise. After drinking so much wine, Yi Xingchen was still able to stand up and didn't collapse. Yi Xingchen's alcohol tolerance had obviously improved, while Jiang Yi wasn't around. Plop! Suddenly, Yi Xingchen fell to the ground, drunk to the point of unconsciousness. He was still talking nonsense. I am not going to the livestock pen. I am not going to the spirit beast peak. I will go to my bed. Sigh. Su Xiaoma and the others shook their heads. Such a situation had been seen many times after the patriarch left. Yi Xingchen really couldn't handle alcohol, but Lan Kang's modified drunken and dreamy could greatly increase the speed of attribute absorption. After a difficult decision, he started to train his alcohol tolerance every day. When the wine gourd was filled to the brim with wine, he would drink a mouthful every morning, noon and night. Just like that, during the few months that Jun Changxiao left, Anyo got drunk again and again. His alcohol tolerance had slowly increased. Yes, Yi Xingchen was still drunk, but if he could stand up after drinking the same bowl of wine, endure a little longer than the alcohol demon, and even speak one more word, it meant that he had won. The reason behind this man's success was because he was carried back from the livestock pen by Li Qingyang from the spirit beast peak. Please remember, Night Emperor must not be humiliated. Go against the wind and sail against the current. Watching Anyo being carried away by Li Qingyang and the others, Jun Changxiao stood with his hands behind his back and spoke with pride. This is the disciple that this great one values the most. This is the indelible spirit of the sect of all times. Night arrived. Layers of arrays appeared in the livestock pen, as hundreds of disciples were on guard. In the spirit beast hall of the spirit beast peak, every room was locked up. Elder Nyo and the other spirit beasts were on guard, as though they were facing a formidable enemy. He is here. He is here. He is here again. Under the bright moon, a shadow walked over unhurriedly. Chapter 1276. My head hurts. Yi Xingchen held his head and said a line that he often said before slowly opening his eyes. Sigh. I'm drunk again. Night Emperor tried hard to recall what happened yesterday, but his memory was still stuck at the time when he stood up and picked up the basin-sized bowl. After practicing his alcohol tolerance for a few months, he was already used to drinking until he blacked out, and was used to being unconscious. Therefore, his emotional fluctuations were not as strong as before. To be exact, he had already given up his face and dignity, as long as Yi Xingchen forced a smile when he sensed that he had become more sensitive to the elements of heaven and earth. Anyo, he really changed. This change was no longer important to Yi Xingchen. What was important was that he could become stronger and ascend to the higher domain as soon as possible, so that he could take revenge on that woman. Creak. After washing up, Anyo walked out. Junior brother Yi, you were too powerful yesterday. Not only did you win against drinking, but you also won against using a sword and a pen. Su Xiaoma walked over from afar and gave a thumbs up. Yi Xingchen was stunned. Didn't I compete with that guy in drinking yesterday? Since when did I compete with a pen and a sword? In the main hall, Yi Feishue cupped his hands and said, Jun Patriarch, your disciple's understanding of swordsmanship has left me in awe. I've competed with people in writing countless times, but this is the first time I've seen someone so drunk that he can use a sword to write bold and unconstrained calligraphy. Nebula Kid said with admiration. You flatter me, you flatter me. Jun Changxiao said this, but he muttered in his heart. I didn't expect Anyo to be so strong when he's drunk. Yesterday on the Spirit Beast Peak, Yi Xingchen walked over unhurriedly and insisted on finding a bed to sleep on. However, he was stopped by the members of the Spirit Beast Hall, and the battle started. The drunk Anyo's combat strength increased tremendously, and he even drew out his sword. His drunken behavior was so bad that it was unbearable to look at. Yi Xingchen was already drunk, so he didn't have any pattern when he used his sword moves. Ifeishue, who was watching from afar, was amazed. Nebula Kid also saw the charm of calligraphy. Thus, the two of them were deeply impressed. Reader, can you be any more perfunctory? This? On the Spirit Beast Peak, Yi Xingqian stood on the martial arts stage that still had traces of battle. He looked at the crisscrossing sword scars and asked with a dull expression, "Was it really done by me?" Junior brother. Su Xiaoma pointed at the sword scars all over the ground and said, "Yesterday, that expert who was writing looked at it for a full 2 hours. In the end, he looked up to the sky and sighed. This is the true realm of calligraphy. This is the true sovereign of the literary path." Yi Xingqian fell silent. How could he tell the level of calligraphy from the sword marks I made when I was drunk? Is that guy crazy? I can't say it like that. Maybe the master's vision is incomparable to that of ordinary people. Maybe Anyo really wrote a soul-stirring song by waving his sword without any pattern. I can't make it up anymore. 3. In the main hall, Jun Changshao said seriously, "Since you've seen the strength of a disciple of the Sect of all times, are you interested in staying here and sparring with him every day?" This guy finally revealed his fangs. He didn't intentionally make Yi Xingqian into the omnipotent king to trick him, but he wanted to trick these experts. No matter if they won or lost, he wanted to keep them for his own use. Jun Patriarch, Alcohol Demon said, "I am willing to stay." He who was obsessed with wine had been subdued by drunken life. As long as there was enough wine and food, staying in the Sect of all times wasn't a problem. "What about the two of you?" Jun Changshao asked. Ifeishue remained silent for a moment and said, "Jun Patriarch's sect is rich in spirit energy and has a beautiful environment. It is suitable for long-term sword comprehension." "That's right," Nebula Kid said. "To comprehend the literary path in such a picturesque environment is my lifelong pursuit." He wasn't being polite. In fact, the Sect of all times environment and spirit energy were excellent. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that it was the best place in the Falling Star continent. The three experts agreed to stay. Of course, it wasn't because of Yi Xingqian's multiple supreme titles. It was mainly because Jun Changshao had saved them from prison, which was a great favor. As for Di Ting, Hui Yinyao, and the other main culprits, they either became contract beasts or had their soul origin controlled. Therefore, there was no need to persuade them. They were set to join the Sect of all times. Other than the unlucky Eye of the Void, who was locked in the 9th level of prison as a reservoir, the others could enter and leave freely. "Senior Shang," Jun Changshao said, "are you returning to the Tianyuan continent or staying in the Sect of all times?" Sai, the Shang ancestor, shook his head and said, "I have long seen through everything in the world. I only hope to break through to the void-piercing realm in my lifetime. If Jun Patriarch doesn't mind, I am willing to stay here for the rest of my life." Of course, the other reason was to accompany Shang Yuhen. Jun Changshao took out the entry form and started the entry process. Pa! The Patriarch's seal fell. A powerhouse who was about to enter the void-piercing realm became a member of the Sect of all times. And for the sake of Shang Yuhen's ancestor, Goxing did not accept the entry fee. Ifeishue, Nebula Kid, Wine Demon, Iron Marquis, Qin Linran, and Hui Yinyao went through the procedures to become members of the Sect of all times. Di Ting was a contract beast, so it did not enter the Sect. At this point, the Sect of all times had 8 more lower void-piercing realm, and 1 more middle void-piercing realm. Their strength could be described as crazy, not counting Eye of the Void and Di Ting. There were only 7 in total. Why were there 2 more? It was Guanzhou and Heqi. As spies planted by Jun Changshao, they were locked in hell by the fortress master, and were beaten crazily by Hui Yinyao. The brothers finally had a good time. Without a doubt, in terms of the overall strength of the Sect of all times, no force in the Falling Star continent could compete with it. Even in the stronger planes of the mortal universe, it was daddy level. Not yet. We still have to upgrade the Sect to first class. They had the strength, but they did not have the required number of disciples, and could not meet the requirements of the epic mission. So Jun Changshao specifically told the Ning brothers to be more open in recruitment and try to recruit 100,000 disciples as soon as possible. In the study, Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the other core disciples stood neatly, each holding a pill that the patriarch just gave them. This is the half-step Wusheng pill. Jun Changshao put his legs on the table and said casually, "After taking it, you can break through to half-saint." The sect master had given them a lot of potions and pills, so when Li Qingyang and the others received the half-saint pill, they could more or less guess what it was. However, when they knew the effects, they were still shocked and stood rooted to the ground. Gulp. While everyone was in a daze, Yi Xingchen had already swallowed the pill. Huff huff huff. Huff 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 huff. After a while, a heavy aura exploded in the study and rushed out unscrupulously, eventually covering the entire sect of all times. Yi Xingchen. He broke through to half-step Wusheng. Huff. Huff huff. Li Qingyang, Xiao Ziji, and the others gradually calmed down and swallowed the pills. Then, a spectacular scene of more than 10 disciples breaking through to half-step Wusheng was played out. What is that? In the Qingyang city, the busy martial artists looked up and saw thick clouds in the direction of the Ironbone Mountain. Huff. In the ice layer sky of the Nine-Heaven Mystery Realm, Jun Changshao stood in the snowy environment and looked up. There is a pill here that can help you break through to half-saint. Lu Qianqian, who was sitting on the mountain peak cultivating, opened her eyes and said, "When did the patriarch come back?" "He has been back for a few days." Jun Changshao threw the pill and said in a commanding tone, "Hurry up and take it." Oh. Lu Qianqian swallowed the half-saint pill and broke through to half-saint from peak Wu Huang. Just as she looked surprised, Jun Changshao took out something that looked like a conch and put it near his mouth. Improve Lu Qianqian. Reason. My first disciple. She meets the requirements. Whoosh, the treasure called Keep Your Word suddenly disintegrated and turned into powder that flew toward Lu Qianqian. When the powder touched her body, she broke through to Wusheng from half-saint. Chapter 1277. Jun Changshao had been thinking about who to give it to after obtaining the promised true deed. First of all, this thing had a limit. The highest level was Wusheng, so the higher-ups of the sect could almost be ruled out because Ding Xingwang, Jiangya, and the others had either reached Wusheng or had been fighting for a long time in the semi-sage realm. Obviously, disciples were suitable. Disciples who had just broken through a realm were more cost-effective. The promised true deed could forcibly raise one's realm. To put it bluntly, it was cheating. If it was given to a martial disciple or martial master, it would definitely not be as good as a semi-sage, so it could only be given to a core disciple. After careful consideration, Jun Changshao chose Lu Qianqian. Reason. His eldest disciple. In fact, Jun Changshao thought the same as the divine great aptitude liquid. According to the order, the disciples would benefit sooner or later, but after using it, it was gone. One-time use. The system said otherwise. From the conch shape, Jun Changshao thought it could be used repeatedly, but at most, there would be some conditions to use it next time. Host, you're thinking too much. The system said, this kind of heaven-defying thing that can forcibly raise one's cultivation level. If it's not a one-time use, wouldn't it create a group of 100,000 Wusheng in minutes? Sigh. Jun Changshao sighed. He was too idealistic at the beginning. The reality was actually very cruel. The system was speechless. This was a good thing that allowed his disciple to advance a level for no reason. What else could he complain about? Could it be that he had really floated to the horizon? Humans. The system sighed. They're too greedy. When Jun Changshao was sighing in his heart, Lu Qianqian was still in a daze. Before she could calm down her state of mind, after breaking through to semi-sage, she broke through to Wusheng in the next second. This rhythm was a bit too fast, and she couldn't keep up. After a while, she suppressed the strong shock in her heart and the huge change in her body. She still couldn't believe it and said, I broke through to Wusheng? That's right, Jun Changshao said. Although Lu Qianqian did not know why she had broken through, she knew that it had something to do with him. She stood up and said, "Thank you, Patriarch. As the eldest disciple, you should take on the responsibility of being the eldest disciple. You should take care of your fellow disciples. Don't stay in the frozen heavens all day to cultivate alone," Jun Changshao said. Yi Xingchen, who had the least sense of belonging, had already moved into the Lingyan pavilion. But this woman was still lacking. Gou Sheng was a little anxious. Lu Qianqian said, "Understood." Although he said so, he still continued to cultivate in Bingzhongtian. It wasn't that he didn't care about his fellow disciples, but that he had just broken through and needed to stabilize his realm. To avoid being accused of being biased, Jun Changshao left the secret realm and returned to his study. He began to seriously consider how to complete the epic quest. "Master." Little Longlong rubbed his eyes and walked over. Then he laid down in his little nest and said, "I'm so sleepy. I'm going to sleep." "Yes. 9 heavens." After Lu Qianqian stabilized his realm, he slowly opened his eyes and said to himself, "Grand Elder, I have already broken through to Wuxia. Can I go to that place and search for the second half of Taishuan's icy heart art?" A rare look of confusion appeared in her clear eyes, because a sentence kept echoing in her ears. "Child, before you have absolute confidence, you must not go there easily, because you will most likely die." "Grand Elder." Lu Qianqian was depressed and said, "This disciple is still unable to truly achieve a heart as calm as water. This might be related to the fact that I have not cultivated the second half, so..." His gaze became firm. "Even if there is no chance of survival, I have to go." When she was in the Taishan sect, she began to cultivate the first half of the Taishuan's icy heart art. It was the Grand Elder who taught her privately. Although her cultivation was crippled later on, she relied on a mysterious mental cultivation method to start all over again. The first half had a total of 4 levels. After inheriting the Ice Emperor's inheritance, Lu Qianqian had already comprehended it. If he wanted to achieve higher results, he could only cultivate the second half. Moreover, the mental cultivation method left behind by the old man in Taishan had always emphasized on one realm, and that was the heart as still as water. Only by truly comprehending it could one master it. Lu Qianqian had always been exploring, and every time he felt that he was just a small step away, it was as if he was separated by a huge mountain. Especially after becoming a disciple of the sect of all times, his state of mind would always fluctuate. Was his Tao heart unstable? Or was it that he had to cultivate the second half in order to achieve a heart as calm as water? Lu Qianqian had been confused before. But in the end, he concluded that the reason why he was unable to reach this realm was because his mental cultivation method was incomplete. Now that he had broken through to Wuxia, he had the idea to search for it. In the study room, Jun Changshao opened the system panel and clicked on the function. The listed functions of the Forging Pavilion and the Spirit Beast Pavilion all had a plus sign, indicating that they could be upgraded. Ding! The Forging Pavilion has been successfully upgraded to an enhanced version of the Forging Pavilion. After the Pill Pavilion was strengthened, it saved materials and increased the speed of refining pills. It brought endless benefits to the sect, so Jun Changshao prioritized upgrading the Forging Pavilion. After all, in terms of usage, weapons and equipment were only limited to pills. As expected, after reading through many weapon and equipment refinement formulas, the amount of materials needed was greatly reduced, and the speed of refining a weapon was also much faster. Jun Changshao was overjoyed. The complete True Yang set is no longer a distant dream. 100,000 disciples were trained in all sorts of martial arts facilities and mystic realms. Their strength was much greater than other martial artists of the same boundary. In addition, if they were to wear the mighty True Yang set and stand in the skies, forming the 4 corners heaven and earth array, the scene would be extremely shocking. Gou Sheng grinned, looking forward to that day. The system complained, "You can't afford it, so don't daydream." Jun Changshao rolled his eyes, and the joy on his face gradually disappeared. He thought to himself, "It's been almost half a month since the 9 great martial emperors were rescued. Why hasn't Shirxi's mission been completed yet? Maybe the host." Ding! Epic mission completed. Beginning calculation. Ding! The host has successfully rescued the 9 great martial emperors from the Starry Sky Fortress safely. The conditions have been met. Epic mission completed. Completion rate, 100%. The host has received 100,000 contribution points. Ding! Sect contribution points. 1-900-0010-0000. Ding! Sect contribution points overflow. Right now the system even had the heart to die. The host has been in the falling star continent for so long, and has yet to settle. I just opened my mouth, and it can't wait to slap my face. Jun Changxiao was happy. Shirsee's mission completion actually gave him 100,000 contribution points. He instantly felt that he had money and could be willful. Don't be agitated, don't be cocky. Gosheng calmed down and thought to himself, there's still Shirse-san to complete. To be honest, Jun Changxiao was a little anxious now. After all, the main culprit was taken away from hell. The Starry Sky Fortress would definitely not let it go. Once their identity was exposed, they would definitely send patrol envoys over. The overall strength of the sect had become much stronger after Yi Feishiwe and the others joined. However, facing 12 void-piercing realm experts was a little difficult. Not to mention, and this was only the patrol envoys. Who knew if there were other departments in the Starry Sky Fortress, or if there were stronger existences? Especially the fortress master who had not appeared. What kind of strength was this? There were too many unknowns, making Jun Changxiao extra cautious. Patriarch. At this moment, Lu Qianqian walked into the study and said, your disciple requests to go out for a period of time. Jun Changxiao said in surprise, isn't the frozen heavens the best place for ice element cultivators to train? Is there a place stronger than it in the falling star continent? Your disciple is not going out for training. What are you going to do? Can your disciple not say? No. Chapter 1278. Jun Changxiao clasped his fingers together and fell silent. He wanted to know the reason why Lu Qianqian went out. The former directly told him about finding the second half of the Taishian Ice Heart technique. This news shocked Gosheng, because in the Starry Sky Fortress, the 9 great martial emperors had mentioned that the second half might be hiding a great formation that could seize the heavens and earth. It could ignore cultivation and forcefully ascend to the higher realm. The formation left behind by the Taishian elder was very terrifying. Even if he didn't have the intention to ascend now, he still planned to find it. After all, it might come in handy in the future. Jun Changxiao said, you've cultivated the first half? Yes, Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changxiao said in realization, no wonder Xia Shuiyan's coldness is so different from yours, even though they're both disciples of the Taishian Shengzong. You can go. He paused and said, but I'll follow you. Lu Qianqian said, according to the records of the first half, the second half is hidden in the cave where the Taishian elder went into seclusion. It's very dangerous inside. If we go in, I won't ask and you won't say. Are you going to take the risk alone? Jun Changxiao interrupted. Lu Qianqian fell silent. Jun Changxiao said, you still don't think of yourself as a disciple of the sect of all times. You don't think of this place as your home. I just don't want to implicate the patriarch. Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changxiao looked at her and said, the cave where the Taishian elder went into seclusion, is it a mountain of blades and a sea of flames? Can't I deal with it with my strength? After saving the 9 great martial emperors, Gosheng was a little arrogant. In his opinion, he could do whatever he wanted in the falling star continent. On the surface, it seemed to be true. Lu Qianqian said, I know that the patriarch is very strong now, but the Taishian elder? No buts. Jun Changxiao interrupted again. I can come and go freely in any forbidden area on the falling star continent. There is no danger. He was very arrogant and domineering. The system complained. How come I didn't see the host being this aggressive in the fortress? All right, Lu Qianqian said. Since the patriarch is going, this disciple cannot stop him. Wait until I've settled the sect's internal affairs, Jun Changxiao said. Then we'll go to Taishuan's Immortal's cave. Lu Qianqian said. Then this disciple will take her leave. Yes. With Jun Changxiao's character, he would never take the initiative to ask his disciples about their secrets. But today he still asked. With Lu Qianqian's personality, she wouldn't say anything even if she had a secret in her heart. However, she still said it today. The system couldn't help but lament. Did they take the wrong medicine? One never asked but suddenly asked. The other never spoke, but suddenly spoke. There was indeed something unusual about this. There wasn't much to arrange for the Sect's affairs. After all, everything was as it was before Jun Changxiao came. And everything was as it was after he came. Host, the system said. I think it's better not to be careless. After all, Taishuan's Immortal is a legend of the falling star continent. The Immortal's cave where Taishuan's ice heart technique is hidden may have many traps and forbidden formations. You're a toxic healer, so I have to go, Jun Changxiao said. I'm serious. Am I not serious at all? Of course, Jun Changxiao said seriously. I also want to go and see if the legendary Taishuan's Immortal's cave left any good treasures behind. I see. The system was enlightened. It turned out that this guy not only had his eyes on the great formation of seizing heaven and earth, but also had other ideas. He was really like Go Sheng. Actually, Jun Changxiao was full of respect for the Taishuan's Immortal. After all, to be able to create two divine martial arts, he was definitely a top expert in the mortal world. Now that he knew there was a Immortal's cave, even if it wasn't for the sake of finding the Taishuan's ice heart technique, he still had to go and pay his respects. Sigh. Jun Changxiao shook his head. When can I become a legend of the falling star continent? The paper I leave behind to wipe my ass will become a treasure that the younger generation will fight over years later. Do the younger generation have a grudge against you? The system asked. A few days later, the ancient warship hovered above the main peak. Jun Changxiao stood at the bow, while Lu Qianqian stood at the stern. Patriarch Li Fei, who was standing on the training ground, raised his head and said, This disciple can follow. Before he could finish, Su Xiaoma covered his mouth. This time I'm going out. All of you have to cultivate diligently. Yes. Whoosh, the ancient warship turned into a streak of light and disappeared from the main peak. Li Fei was puzzled. Senior brother, what are you doing? Su Xiaoma rolled his eyes at him and said, The patriarch and senior sister rarely go out alone. Why are you following them? As expected of someone personally taught by Elder Wei, his eyesight was very sharp. Yes. Li Fei slapped his forehead and said, Why didn't I think of that? Luckily, senior brother stopped me. I almost made a mistake. No. Yi Xingchen, who was sleeping soundly, suddenly woke up from his dream. His forehead was covered in sweat, and his face was gradually becoming more and more ferocious. He was dreaming again. He was dreaming of the difficulties he went through when he obtained the Taishuan Sutra. Anyo was not afraid of anything except for the process of obtaining the sutra in his previous life. It could even be described as a nightmare. Whoosh! Yi Xingchen calmed down and looked toward the north. He thought to himself, Taishian Elder, since you left behind such a fortuitous opportunity for the younger generation, why did you leave behind such a terrifying trap? He looked in the direction of the ancient warship. It was flying to the end of Lu province in the northeast, and merging into the endless sea. The Starfall continent had the East Sea, West Sea and South Sea. Naturally, there was the North Sea. Jun Changxiao and Lu Qianqian were currently in the North Sea. The place they were heading toward was the abode left behind by the Taishian Elder. Unlike the other three seas, which each had a province, the North Sea did not have a complete continent. After the War of Emperors, the stars were densely covered with small islands. Are you sure the abode of the Taishian Elder is in the North Sea? Jun Changxiao asked. Lu Qianqian silently took out a yellowed manual with the words Taishian Ice Heart Arts and placed it on the table. She said, The last few pages have detailed records. This is the original? Correct. Jun Changxiao said in surprise. This should be the ultimate treasure of the Taishian Xingzong. How did it end up in your hands? The Grand Elder gave it to me. Lu Qianqian said. She said that only I can perfectly comprehend the manual. Jun Changxiao crossed his arms and said, I'm very curious now. Was it because of Fong Lingyu that you were expelled? Or was there some other hidden reason? Because she didn't have any hidden reasons. Really? Really? Jun Changshao took the manual and flipped to the last few pages without looking at the incantations. He said, "Is it because I said earlier that I don't consider myself a disciple of the sect of all times that you took out the manual?" Lu Qianqian was silent. After reading the detailed records of the abode's location, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "You've cultivated this kind of mental cultivation method and turned your brain into a block of ice. Some of the things you do are easily misunderstood by others." "I don't care about being misunderstood," Lu Qianqian said. What else could Jun Changshao say? The system complained. The first disciple has always held the bottom line for the sect. Otherwise, under the host's guidance, the sect of all times would have become the true sand sculpture sect of all times. Chapter 1279. Interstellar Fortress. The Z envoy and the ugly envoy stood with their heads lowered because the fortress master had just come out of seclusion. Trash. A bunch of trash. After brewing his emotions for half a day, this big shot whose face couldn't be seen finally exploded. He had gone into seclusion to recuperate because of the backlash. But when he came out, the 9 main culprits of the 9 levels of hell had all escaped. "Master," the Z envoy said, "I'll take all the responsibility." As the boss of the 9 levels of hell, he couldn't escape the blame. The fortress master said coldly, "We must capture all the main culprits as soon as possible. I've already sent people to investigate." The Z envoy said with a serious expression, "We'll have news soon." The escape of the main culprits was a big deal. He directly mobilized almost all the elites of the interstellar fortress to search the mortal universe. Unless the culprits ascended, they would find them sooner or later. "There's also the falling star continent," the fortress master said. "We can use this chance to investigate." Because he was injured, he had to put this matter on hold. Now he could use the elites to investigate who killed the enforcer general. "Yes," the Z envoy ordered. The fortress master left. After he left, everyone felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders. "Everyone," the Z envoy said seriously, "Master is very angry. We must capture the culprits as soon as possible. As for the falling star continent, let's put it aside for now." There was a priority to everything. In his opinion, capturing the main culprits was more important than finding the enforcer general's murderer. Swish, swish, interstellar warships flew out of the fortress. The cultivators in the city were all very surprised. Just what had happened that would cause the fortress to repeatedly dispatch such a large number of people? Falling star continent North Sea. The ancient warship floated in the sky. The sea below was covered with many islands. At first glance, it looked like a constellation in the sky. "It should be here." Standing on the deck, Jun Changshao took out the Taishian Ice Heart secret manual and compared it with the introduction. His eyes were filled with certainty. "So," the system complained, "you don't plan to return the first half to me?" Whoosh whoosh. The ancient warship slowly descended and landed on the beach of a small island. Jun Changxiao's spiritual sense covered the island and said, "No one has been here for a long time." Lu Qianqian said cautiously, "There are many powerful spirit beasts here." "Yes." Jun Changxiao rubbed his hands, his eyes shining. "They're all martial arts resources." Roar. In the forest of the island, Jun Changxiao stood in place, still happily tasting the wild fruit he had just picked. With a flash of cold light, the beast's head flew off. Lu Qianqian withdrew her sword and landed in front of the sect leader. After breaking through to the martial sage realm, her strength had increased significantly. She had encountered many spirit beasts earlier, but they were all killed by her sword on the spot. Lu Qianqian walked to the beast's corpse and skillfully took out the crystal core with her sword. Then, she threw it to Jun Changxiao and said, "Patriarch, there doesn't seem to be a cave here. We have to find them one by one." The islands in this sea area had existed since ancient times, and there were hundreds of them. It would take some time to find the cave where the Taishian elder was in seclusion. However, In the past few days, the two of them had searched dozens of places, and even dug 3 feet into the ground, but there were still no clues. Jun Changshao sat on a rock and carefully flipped through the last few pages of the secret manual. He held his chin and said, "Could it be that there is an isolation array? Patriarch." At this moment, Lu Qianqian pointed to the sea and said, "Look." Jun Changshao looked up and found that in the distant sea area, a wave gushed out like a spring and rushed into the sky. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Several waves appeared in other directions. They were separated by a certain distance and seemed to contain some kind of mystery. "Let's go up and take a look." Jun Changshao and Lu Qianqian flew up. The two of them looked down and found that there were a total of 9 water pillars near the sea area, and a lone island was shrouded in them. "Let's go." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The two of them cut through the sky and flew past the 2 water pillars. But just as they were about to approach the island, the surrounding heaven and earth attributes suddenly stirred and then converged into 2 palm prints. Boom, boom. Jun Changshao drew his left and right hands at the same time, breaking the pressure of the energy. He looked at the cold woman in front of him and said speechlessly, "Am I so weak that I need a disciple to block the blade?" Lu Qianqian moved aside. The 2 palm prints appeared too suddenly. She didn't think much and stood in front of the patriarch, preparing to freeze and then shatter. But she was not as fast as the other party. "Let's go." Jun Changshao was the first to fly over, but he ended up crashing into the invisible barrier with a bang. His entire handsome face caved in. Damn! How could there be an array? Go Sheng had been releasing his spiritual senses the whole time, but he didn't catch any aura of the array at all. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, the heaven and earth attributes became more restless, and then converged into palm prints that pressed down from all directions. Yi Xingchen sat cross-legged in the room. He remembered that he had bombarded the barrier for several hours before he broke the barrier that enveloped the island in the soaring 9 springs. What a scam! Night Emperor shook his head bitterly. As one of the 10 great martial emperors, he had almost exhausted all his strength to break the outer barrier defense. If this spread out, luckily it's me. Yi Xingchen comforted himself. If it were someone else, they definitely wouldn't be able to break it. Boom! Jun Changshao, who was in the soaring 9 springs, used his powerful ability to break the barrier on the spot. It took him 1 minute to break the barrier. As for the various palm prints pressing down on him, they were all dealt with in the time he took to break the barrier. As a result, Lu Qianqian, who was responsible for protecting him, was in a passive state the whole time. Yi Xingchen was still thinking about the past. He remembered that after breaking the barrier, he landed on the island shrouded by the 9 springs, and was besieged by hundreds of huge creatures made of sand. It took him a Herculean effort to deal with them. Those creatures are extremely powerful. Only I could destroy them after expending a lot of energy. If it were the Spirit Emperor and the others, they would have died long ago. Night Emperor's eyes were filled with pride. However, he didn't know that Jun Changshao had landed on the island and was leading Lu Qianqian deeper into the island. The hundreds of huge creatures that appeared had already been beaten back into sand. It still took him 1 minute. That door. Yi Xingchen's expression suddenly turned serious. He clearly remembered that when he entered the inner area from the beach and walked to the central area, he saw an ancient stone door covered in vines. There were strange words engraved on it, and it exuded an unfathomable aura. The first 2 dangers were dealt with by force. However, Night Emperor was worried about how to open this door. He paced back and forth for a few days before it suddenly opened by itself. So, Night Emperor thought to himself, I went early back then. In fact, I could have waited a few more days for the soaring 9 springs phenomenon to weaken. Then, I could have easily entered the inner area. If someone didn't know this law, they would have died in vain. Boom! At this moment Jun Changshao, who was also in front of the stone door, raised the glowing Taishan Ice Heart secret manual. The seemingly indestructible door gradually opened. He said with a surprised look, It's that simple? Yi Xingchen touched his face subconsciously and said in confusion, Why does it hurt a little? Chapter 1280. Knight Emperor had been to the North Sea in his previous life, and entered the cave of the Taishan old man. After experiencing all kinds of hardships, he obtained the Taishan Bible. That was definitely a difficult past to look back on, and it even brought about a psychological shadow. However, today, thousands of years later, Jun Changshao brought Lu Qianqian to the place he had been to before. Facing the same crisis, it was easily resolved. Fortunately, Yi Xingqian did not follow, otherwise, he would definitely vomit blood on the spot. Although he did not want to admit it, the fact was that only Jun Changshao, who was Wu Sheng's great perfection realm, was stronger than Yi Xingqian. The various restrictions left by the Taishan old man could hardly bring him trouble. Even the closed door of the cave, because of the Taishan ice heart technique, did not need to be forcefully cracked, and did not need to wait for time to enter. The system roared, "He's just here to play." Jun Changshao not only slapped Anyo's face, but also its face. After all, it had previously asked the other party to take it seriously. Lu Qianqian, who was walking in the dark tunnel, did not speak, but looking at the back of the person walking in front, she could not help but think, how strong is the patriarch? If it were her, she would not be able to contend with the two groups of obstacles outside. But in front of Jun Changshao, it was not worth mentioning. Boom! Snake-like spirit beasts in the tunnel rushed in, but they were directly obliterated by a punch. Jun Changshao took the crystal core and smiled. "This place is dangerous for you, but it is not dangerous for me." Lu Qianqian was silent. Ho ho! Ho ho! At this moment, more snake beasts rushed in from the inside, and the number was so large that it felt like entering a snake's nest. Ta! Jun Changshao took a step forward, opened his hands to both sides, stretched his head forward, and spat out billowing flames. Ho ho! The hot flames rushed along the tunnel, and the attacking snake beasts were all burned into nothingness. Lu Qianqian's eyes were filled with shock. The patriarch's flames were much stronger and purer than before. Was this considered very strong? One had to know that Go Sheng did not even use the fire spirit. "Don't just stand there," Jun Changshao said. "Hurry up and pick up the cores." Lu Qianqian came back to her senses and collected the crystal nuclei that were scattered all over the ground. She was still thinking about the fire-spitting scene just now. Ice elementalists were more sensitive to fire elementalists because each of them countered the other. In the past, Jun Changshao's flames had completely suppressed Lu Qianqian's flames. Now they were still suppressing her, and the gap between them was getting bigger and bigger. After the snake beasts were dealt with, there were no other dangers. The two of them walked for a few minutes until they reached the end of the tunnel. They stopped in front of a cliff, and there was only a suspension bridge connecting them to the other side. Roar! The angry roars of ferocious beasts could be heard from below, and extremely violent waves of air blew over. Patriarch! Lu Qianqian frowned and said, "This bridge may be dangerous. Come over quickly." Jun Changshao stood at the other end of the bridge and shouted. Although Lu Qianqian was expressionless, her heart had already collapsed. Swoosh! She tiptoed and walked along the suspension bridge. The hair-raising aura below was even more intense. Roar! Suddenly, 3 huge snake beasts rushed out from the bottom of the cliff that was like a dark hell. Their faces were ferocious, and they were roaring. Yi Xingqian, who was in the Sect of all times, recalled the scene when he came to the cliff and fought with the 3-headed snake beasts. He said with lingering fear, "Who would have thought that the extinct ancient 3-headed snake would be in the abode of the old man from Taishan? Although I didn't win. But they can't do anything to me." From Knight Emperor's words, it wasn't hard to tell that the trip to the old man's abode of Taishan was always a win. After all, he had to save face. After all, he was beaten to a pulp and only barely managed to cross the suspension bridge. He couldn't tell anyone about this. When Lu Qianqian crossed the bridge again, she was already rooted to the spot. Jun Changshao had appeared below at some point, and evil energy even more powerful than evil energy appeared on his right hand. He placed it on the head of one of the snake beasts and said, "Be obedient." The 3-headed snake beasts were terrified. The aura emanating from this human's palm carried an evil aura that caused their minds to tremble. They were extremely fearful. Whoosh! At this moment, a 3-year-old child appeared from the evil energy and said with a burning gaze, "Dad, can I eat them?" "Yes." Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Little Sia released a majestic evil energy that instantly enveloped the 3-headed snake. Roar! A miserable cry sounded. Whoosh! After a while, the evil energy returned to little Sia's body. The originally huge and ferocious 3-headed snake had been reduced to a bag of bones. The evil energy in its body and the energy in its core had all been absorbed. The ancient snake beast that had caused so much trouble for Night Emperor had become a tonic just like that. Because of its ugly appearance, Jun Changshao wasn't interested in making it a contract beast. Lu Qianqian was stunned. She wasn't stunned because the vicious beast had been taken care of. She was stunned because a child had suddenly appeared and called the patriarch Dad. "There's no danger. Let's go," Jun Changshao said. Lu Qianqian walked along the suspension bridge to the other end and thought to herself, so the patriarch has a child with her. Although she was shocked, she was still able to maintain absolute calm. If it were Su Xiaoma, he would have jumped up already. "Dad." After digesting the evil energy, little Xia patted her little belly and looked at Lu Qianqian with a smile. "Is this my mother?" Boom! The cliff wall shook and the little guy's head caved in. There was a tunnel at the other end of the cliff. Because of the eerie evil energy that occasionally blew out from within, Jun Changshao brought little Xia with him. The little guy became obedient. He would occasionally glance at Lu Qianqian and think to himself, "If she's not my mother, then who is?" After a short while, the 3 of them arrived at the end of the tunnel. They found themselves in a stone cave that was several dozen square meters in size. There were stone chairs, stone tables, and stone cabinets for storing items. "Dad." Little Xia pointed at the wall in front of them. "There are words." Jun Changshao looked over and saw the words, "Night Emperor was here," carved into the smooth stone wall. Since the late Night Emperor was here, it means that this is really the cave abode of the Taishan Elder. Jun Changshao learned from the 9 Taishan emperors that the Night Emperor obtained the Taishan Bible before his death. This and the Taishan Ice Heart art were both created by the Taishan Elder. Now that the guy with the grass on his grave left his handwriting here, it was enough to prove that he had found the right place. Judging from the slightly messy handwriting, Lu Qianqian analyzed. This person, who was once one of the 10 great martial emperors, must have paid an extremely high price to get here. "Yeah," Jun Changshao said. "Just the defensive barrier outside and the sandmen that we encountered. If it were the Spirit Emperor and the others, they would have been defeated long ago. The fact that the Night Emperor was able to get here shows that he is quite capable. What a pity." He shook his head and said, "Such a powerful person was defeated by a woman, and even helped her ascend to the upper realm." Whoosh! Suddenly, the ground in the empty area in front of them suddenly cracked. Then 3 stone platforms slowly appeared. 3 exquisite boxes were placed on each platform. 2 of them were open, and the last one was tightly shut. "I have left 3 types of opportunities in the cave abode. Those who enter can choose one of them." An old voice that seemed to be able to pierce through the void sounded. Chapter 1281. Jun Changshao's expression turned solemn. The voice that suddenly sounded could penetrate the soul and shake the soul. "Very strong," Jun Changshao said to himself. "Very strong." Whether it was the patrol envoy or the Dark Demon King, they did not give him much pressure. Now, just the voice alone made him feel pressured. Could it be the Taishan Elder? The system said, "The martial emperors who fought against the Soul race in ancient times were very strong, right?" But they were only respected as top powerhouses by later generations. Only the Taishan Elder was called a legend. This is enough to show how big the gap between them is. Swoosh! Jun Changshao cupped his hands and said respectfully, "It is one of the biggest regrets of my life to not be able to live in your era and see your face. Kid." The deep voice that penetrated the soul sounded again. "If you ascend to the upper realm, we will meet again." Jun Changshao was dumbfounded. He knew that there was a formation in the cave, and the voice was left in advance. It would be triggered when someone came in. but it actually replied to him. I left a trace of spiritual thought in the cave. Although I have transcended the mortal world, I can still maintain contact with this place. The deep voice said. Jun Changxiao's eyes widened. Even the usually calm Lu Qianqian was dumbfounded. Leaving a trace of spiritual thought in the cave, and being able to communicate with the person who came in. What did it mean? It meant that he could speak to a legend. Fuck. Jun Changxiao showed his uncultured characteristics incisively, and hurriedly cupped his hands. Senior, do you have some treasure that you need to tell me personally? He had watched many TV dramas. As long as there was a powerful person who appeared in the form of voice or video, he would definitely teach the male lead a peerless secret technique. The old voice said. No. Jun Changxiao rolled his eyes. If there was nothing left, what was the use of a voice call? The Taishan elder said. You are the most powerful and talented among the 3 fated people who entered the cave, so I have high hopes for you. I also hope to meet you in the upper realm in the future. Senior, you flatter me. Jun Changxiao said humbly. Of course. The Taishan old man continued. If one day you ascend to the upper realm, you can come to Fengqi Celestial Mountain to look for me. Senior, are you going to protect me? Jun Changxiao asked. The Taishan old man said. This old man has ascended to the upper realm for a long time. I've barely made a name for myself. It shouldn't be a problem to protect someone like you, who has just ascended. Jun Changxiao cupped his hands and said. If I ascend to the upper realm in the future, I will definitely look for you. Although he could tell that the legendary battle pet warrior was bragging, he was still grateful that the legendary battle pet warrior had protected him, because they were both from the Falling Star continent. Baby, the Taishan old man said. I hope you won't make this old man wait too long. The last few words gradually faded, indicating that the other party had turned off the voice call. After all, there was a data limit between the upper realm and the lower realm. He left. Jun Changxiao looked disappointed. Lu Qianqian said. If the Taishan seniors knew about the patriarch's death-seeking personality, they definitely wouldn't want you to look for him. Why? I'm afraid you'll be implicated. Jun Changxiao was speechless. Qianqian, you think too much of me. Lu Qianqian didn't say anything. It's not a thought, it's a fact. If the patriarch ascends to the upper realm, I can already imagine how the Taishan seniors would cry and beg you not to look for him. Jun Changxiao looked at the only unopened box and said, could it be that the second half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique is hidden? It should be. Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changxiao said. The first 2 fated people were the founder of the Taishan Shengzong and the Late Night Emperor. The former obtained the first half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique, while the latter obtained the Taishan Sutra. Lu Qianqian had already walked over. Don't move. Jun Changxiao stopped her and said, be careful of traps. Lu Qianqian stopped in front of the stone table and said, Patriarch, I heard from the Grand Elder that only those with the Taishan Ice Heart physique can open the box of the Taishan Ice Heart technique. Oh, Jun Changxiao had also walked over. His spiritual sense permeated the exquisite box, and he immediately felt an extremely cold aura. So he said, then give it a try. Lu Qianqian raised her hand and placed it on the box. Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, an extremely cold aura emerged, and then extended from her finger to her palm, and quickly froze it. Jun Changxiao said in shock, stop. It was too late. The cold aura had already spread from her finger. Not only could Lu Qianqian not withdraw her hand, but her right palm was also completely frozen. The cold aura even entered her body first, causing her to frown. As a professional ice cultivator, she was unexpectedly disturbed by an external ice element. It was enough to show how terrifying the cold aura in the box was. Ka ka ka. Ka 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 ka. The freezing aura spread all the way, and half of Lu Qianqian's arm was frozen. She couldn't stop the cold aura from spreading, and she couldn't break free. She could only endure the pain of the cold, and raise her left hand to push the patriarch away, so that he wouldn't be affected. Pa! Jun Changxiao grabbed her wrist first and said, this pure ice energy, can you absorb it for your own use? Lu Qianqian was stunned. Pa! At this moment, Jun Changshao grabbed her frozen right wrist with his other hand and said, "I'll help you suppress the cold aura. You refine them all." Lu Qianqian was speechless. The cold aura emerging from the box was too terrifying. She, a Wusheng level ice cultivator, couldn't even withstand it, so how could she refine it? Whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a scorching flame erupted, dispelling the cold aura that permeated the cave, and Lu Qianqian's almond-shaped eyes widened. Because the flame released by the patriarch this time was even stronger than before. Drip drip. The ice on her wrist melted, and then turned into water droplets that splashed down. "Refine," Jun Changshao said. Lu Qianqian hurriedly suppressed her shock, and took the initiative to absorb the cold aura suppressed by the patriarch's domineering flame. It was strange. The spirit of the fire spirit could obviously suppress the cold aura, but the other party still surged up along her fingers, completely unafraid of death. If it was the original strength, not only would Lu Qianqian be unable to absorb it, but she would also be frozen long ago. Now, under the tempering of the flame, the attribute changed from ice to freshness mode, and it was the best time to consume and refine it. Therefore, the scene that appeared was Jun Changshao holding the eldest disciple's wrist, and using the scorching flame to help offset part of the cold aura. Standing in the distance, little Xia covered her eyes and muttered, "Not suitable for children, not suitable for children." 2 hours later, all the cold aura that gushed out was absorbed, and Lu Qianqian sat down cross-legged. At this moment, she was controlling the cold aura gathered in her dantian, and gradually condensing it into an ice core with the Taishan ice heart technique. Obviously, the cold aura in the box was some kind of high-level ice attribute. As long as it was completely integrated, there would be another kind of ice seed. Lu Qianqian divided her attention to look at Jun Changshao, and a trace of melancholy flashed in her clear eyes. "Grand Elder," she secretly said, "I'm afraid I can't be as calm as still water in this life." Pa! Creak! Standing in front of the stone platform, Jun Changxiao's fingers gently moved, and the box slowly opened. Inside was a yellowed manual with the words, Taishan Ice Heart Technique Second Half, written on the leather surface. "You found it." Taking it out, he shook his head and said, "It's not difficult at all." Chapter 1282. He thought it would be difficult, but after killing a bunch of Sandman snake beasts, he got the second half of Taishuan's Ice Heart formula. The whole process was too easy. He could not let Anyo know, or it would hurt his pride. Because Lu Qianqian was still refining the ice element, Jun Changshao took the secret manual and sat on the stone bench, reading it first. He was not interested in the mantra, so when he flipped to the last few pages, he found the layout of the array. It was introduced as the Heaven and Earth Creation Array. There really is one. Jun Changxiao's eyes lit up. As long as he could set up this array that ignored the realm of ascension, he would not have to worry about breaking through the void. As long as he was happy, he could go on a trip whenever he wanted. However, the array was very complicated. Jun Changxiao looked at it for a while and felt dizzy. Forget it. I'll read the introduction. He turned his attention to the text introduction of the array. After reading it, he realized that this array not only needed the conventional array, but also the 5 elements or treasures to support it. I have the 5 elements body, so it's not a big problem. What Jun Changxiao was struggling with now was how to set up the array, and how to teleport to the upper realm, without being discovered by the Starry Sky Fortress. Why should I be afraid of being discovered? He smiled and said, if I really want to ascend one day, can't I just destroy the fortress that is in my way? If this idea was heard by the masters of the mortal universe, they would definitely give him a thumbs up and say, Jun Patriarch, you're awesome. Jun Changxiao did not have the intention to ascend, and he could not set up the array. So he put the second half of the book into the space ring, and started to walk around the cave. Senior Taishuan's cave should have more than 3 boxes, right? Wait! Jun Changxiao thought of something. He came to the stone platform, and forcibly put the exquisitely crafted box into the space ring. He said, let Master Fan see how the material is. Maybe he can break it down and make equipment. because the 3 opportunities had been taken away. The array that connected the box to the stone platform had lost its function. Lu Qianqian sat cross-legged on the ground, still refining her ice attribute. Jun Changshao began to stroll around the cave until he saw the words Night Emperor was here written on the stone wall. He immediately spat and said, "Bah, Martial Emperor, you have no manners at all." The system roared, "You have quality." Clang! Jun Changshao took out his jade dragon asks the heaven's sword. He first erased the word Yi, then carved the word Jun on it. Only then did he nod his head in satisfaction and said, "Just take it as a souvenir." The system was speechless. Just a moment ago, he was still criticizing Night Emperor for his lack of manners. Now he was spitting and destroying public facilities, as expected of Jun Gobiao. 4 hours later, Lu Qianqian finally stood up. The cold aura around her was even stronger than before. It could be seen that the ice seed extracted from the box had improved her overall strength by quite a bit. "Let's go," Jun Changshao said. "Let's return to the sect." He looked depressed because he had wandered around the cave for a long time, but in the end he found nothing. The legendary battle pet warriors of the Starfall continent were really stingy. "Thank you," Lu Qianqian whispered. "What did you just say? I didn't hear you." Jun Changshao tilted his head and said. Lu Qianqian was silent for a moment, then bowed her head and said, "Thank you, Patriarch, for helping this disciple to refine the ice attribute." Jun Changshao stopped and looked at her with a serious expression saying, "What I need is not thanks. What I need is that you can bear the responsibility of being the eldest disciple." "This disciple understands," Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changshao was a little surprised. This woman clearly looked colder than before, but her tone was warmer than before. "Let's go." The 3 of them went back the way they came. When they reached the stone door, Jun Changshao shook his head and said, "Senior Taixian, you left behind only 3 boxes in such a big cave. Since you're so stingy, don't blame this junior for tearing down the door." Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Green dragon crescent blade, jade dragon asks the heaven's sword, and all kinds of other weapons were brought out. He skillfully and nimbly tore down the 2 ancient stone doors. Lu Qianqian was speechless. Only the Patriarch would tear down the door after obtaining the fortuitous encounter left behind by others. The Taixian old man. Did you see that? If you dare to protect such a person, you'll have to wipe his ass every day. Actually, it couldn't be said that Jun Changshao was too shameless. After all, the 3 fortuitous encounters had been taken away, and the Taixian cave had completed its mission. There was no need for it to exist anymore. Wouldn't it be better to tear down the stone door and use it to refine equipment? Whoosh! The ancient warship dragged a streak of light and merged with the sky and the sea. Jun Changshao took out the second half of the Taixian ice heart technique. Then, he took out a pen and paper and engraved the formation diagram. Only then did he pass the first half of the technique to Lu Qianqian. He had no interest in learning this kind of ice-type mental cultivation technique. "Patriarch, after I memorize the second half of the technique, I can place the Taixian ice heart technique in the technique pavilion for my junior brothers to cultivate," Lu Qianqian said. Jun Changshao said, "I'm very gratified that you can think this way. However," Lu Qianqian added, "it requires a specific ice-type physique to cultivate. Otherwise it will backfire." A top-notch sect doesn't just exist for tens or hundreds of years. It will exist for thousands, or even tens of thousands of years. During this long period of time, generations of outstanding disciples will emerge. Therefore, our ancestors can leave all kinds of martial arts for them to inherit, Jun Changshao said. Lu Qianqian said, "Patriarch thinks very far. As the leader of a sect, your vision must be far-sighted." Jun Changshao turned around and said jokingly, "Now, do you still want to meddle with my patriarch's position?" When Lu Qianqian first joined the sect of all times, she once said that it would be better to pass the position of sect leader to her. In fact, she had already approved of him after the sect competition. "I still need to develop the sect and rely on you disciples to make the Ironbone sect famous in the continent. How can I be lazy?" This was what Jun Changxiao said. Today, when Lu Qianqian thought about it again, she understood that he wasn't lying or joking. In just a few years, he really turned a nameless sect into the strongest sect in the continent. Qianqian, Jun Changxiao, who was standing at the bow of the ship, put his hands behind his back and looked up at the sky. He said heroically, "This is just the beginning. There is still a sea of stars waiting for us to conquer." Li Qingyang wasn't here. Xiao Ziji wasn't here. Page wasn't here either. Otherwise, one sentence from the patriarch would definitely make one's blood boil. However, Lu Qianqian was beside him. She responded with an "oh," which didn't make the scene that was supposed to explode. Instead, she pulled the atmosphere down to the lowest point. At the beginning of the month, the sect of all times was recruiting disciples as usual. Because the patriarch reminded them in advance, the Ning brothers lowered the requirements. Therefore, after a few rounds of screening, at least 5,000 new disciples were recruited. This was the highest number of recruits in recent years. We're still short of 10,000. Jun Changxiao, who was on an island in the North Sea, heard that the number of people had reached 90,000. A smile appeared on his face. Grandpa, the bandit leader, who had been trampled under his feet and made a living by killing people and robbing people, begged with fear in his eyes, "Please. Please let me go." Whoosh! The blade flashed, and a head rolled. Jun Changxiao put away the green dragon crescent blade and said, "Let's go." Whoosh whoosh. The ancient warship set sail again. The bandit stronghold that had occupied the island for decades and robbed and killed innocent people was burned to ashes by the fire. Chapter 1283. Sect of All Times. After the Ning brothers recruited new disciples, Jun Changxiao brought Lu Qianqian back from the North Sea. They didn't gain much from this trip. The only valuable things were the second half of the Taishan Ice Heart technique and the formations recorded in it. As for robbing the bandits, they only earned a small amount of money. Patriarch Li Qingyang came to see him. There are more and more disciples now. Many of the sect's facilities can't support them. "It's fine," Jun Changxiao said. "I've already prepared a lot." He bought a few 9 transformation spirit cleansing pills from the epic quest reward. Before heading to the North Sea, he spent the rest on the sect's facilities. Li Qingyang left with the various facilities. Jun Changxiao began to think about how to complete Shisan's quest. First, he needed to recruit 100,000 disciples and become a first-rate sect. There was a fixed number of disciples, and their strength had to meet the requirements, so it was easy to complete. Second, he needed to gain the recognition of the various sects and top experts of the Falling Star continent. This was more difficult because there was no hard standard. Who knew if he could complete it? "It's simple." Jun Changxiao interlocked his fingers and said, "Pick an auspicious day and hold a martial arts convention in the Falling Star continent. Invite all the forces and top experts to participate, and let them elect me as the Martial Arts Alliance leader." "That's a good idea, but," the system said, "a martial arts convention can't be held just because you want to. Many sects must jointly announce it." "It's not a big problem." Jun Changxiao stood up and said, "I'll go to the Taishan Shengzong now." Taishan Shengzong? Jun Changxiao sat on a chair in the main hall as a VIP and explained his purpose. "This," acting patriarch Yu Linyan said in shock. "Why does Jun patriarch want to hold a martial arts convention?" Jun Changxiao said, "To elect me as the alliance leader." The mouths of Yu Linyan, Xia Tie, and the other higher-ups twitched. Everyone wanted to be the boss of a plane, but Jun Changxiao was so direct and straightforward. He was not tactful at all. This was the first time he had seen someone like that. "You can't." Sure. Yu Linyan hesitated for a moment, then said, "But we still need to obtain the agreement of the other first-rate sects, and then announce it together. Your esteemed sect only needs to agree. Leave the rest to me," Jun Changxiao said. At this point, Yu Linyan had no choice but to agree. She said, "Jun Patriarch, when will the martial arts convention be held?" 2 months later. Goodbye. Jun Changxiao gave the time and arrived at the Radiant Light Sacred Sect. He stood on the martial stage and stated his intentions. Looking at the patriarch and the upper echelons in front of the hall, he said indifferently, "I'm done speaking. Who agrees and who disagrees?" Because of the relationship between Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyan, he was more polite when he went to the Taishan Xingzong. When he came to the other sects, he revealed his true colors. This kind of attitude of beating up whoever opposed made the patriarch of the Radiant Light Sacred Sect say, I agree. As a result, in a short period of time, Jun Changxiao visited all the first-rate sects, and the answer was that they all agreed. No one dared to object. World-defying sacred sect, martial arts practice field. Ao Wushuang, who had just started cultivating, stood with trembling legs. Because Jun Changxiao was standing beside him, the aura he emitted made him feel fear. I agree. The patriarch in front of the hall hurriedly said. Jun Changxiao's serious face was replaced by a smile. He patted Ao Wushuang's shoulder and said, To be able to stand up again from a setback, you're pretty good. The once arrogant young patriarch, who was later tyrannical by Yi Xingchen, didn't even dare to breathe in front of Go Sheng. It was only after the other party left that he powerlessly collapsed to the ground. Father! Ao Wushuang's 10 fingers fiercely dug into the stone floor. He raised his head with difficulty and roared with tears in his eyes. Can I participate in the Sect of All Times' examination? When he was recuperating, he had thought about it a lot. Later on, he understood that he lost to Yi Xingchen not because of his aptitude or cultivation, but because he had a good patriarch, and he didn't. Not willing. Until today, when Jun Changxiao appeared, until he felt that he was insignificant, he finally decided to participate in the Sect of All Times' examination. My son, the patriarch said solemnly, you will lose your status as a young patriarch and lose everything you have. I don't care. Ao Wushuang cried and shouted. I just want to become stronger. The patriarch was silent for a moment. Then he swallowed his dantian and said, Jun Patriarch, can my son participate in your sect's recruitment examination? Patriarch Ao. Jun Changxiao's voice came from the sky. Regardless of whether you are a member of the royal family or a commoner, you can participate in the Sect of All Times' examination. The prerequisite is that you pass. Thank you, Jun Patriarch. Ao Wushuang stood up with difficulty and clenched his fists, saying, I will go to southwest Yangzhou now. Jun Changxiao didn't reply, because he had already flown far away. Because Ao Wushuang cultivated the sect's mental cultivation technique, he was arrogant. However, he was still very young. After all, he had only become enemies with the Sect of All Times because of the Battle of Dragons and Tigers. He hadn't committed any major mistakes, so he was qualified to participate in the Sect of All Times' entrance examination. Jun Changxiao couldn't just accept all of these people who had joined the sect and were already very strong. He would definitely set up a more difficult moral, intellectual, and aesthetic test. Some people were allowed to participate in the examination, but some weren't. For example, Morong Xian from the Lily Holy Sect, because she had hurt Xiao Ziji. Of course, she wouldn't participate because she had a different status from Ao Wushuang. A few days later, after the news of the 9 Thearch's return gradually died down, another shocking piece of news spread. 2 months later, the continent would hold the highest standard martial alliance conference in history. The venue would be the Sect of All Times. As long as one was from a sect, as long as one was from a clan, as long as one was from an organization, regardless of cultivation level, they could participate. They only needed to provide proof of identity. Big news! Big news! Martial artists from all walks of life fought to discuss the news. This so-called Martial Alliance Conference is led by the patriarch of the Sect of All Times. Not only are there sects and clans, but there are also famous rogue cultivators. Oh my God! All the reputable people in the continent are going. It's definitely going to be a big event. Just as the martial artists were discussing, the formation masters from all the cities were actively repairing the projection array, because the Martial Alliance Conference in 2 months would be broadcasted live. How big was the scale? The cities and towns that were a grade lower than the cities were also starting to build projection arrays. When the time came, they had to cover the entire continent. In order to complete the epic mission, Jun Changshao was going to play a martial alliance conference that would go down in history. Of course, the evil sect and evil sect were also invited. Even the Demon Emperor's Gate's sect master had received the invitation and was considering whether to go or not. Go. If you don't go, you'll be in trouble. The Deicide Temple and Demon Fiend sect that were invited also started to prepare. As for the sects, clans, organizations, and rogue cultivators that received the Martial Alliance Conference invitation, they also started to become active. Miahua Palace. Zhangsun Fanghua held the invitation and said with a conflicted expression, "Should we tell the palace master?" Ever since attending Su Xiaoma and Xia Shuiyun's engagement, Shi Jingxian returned to the sect and went into seclusion. She had yet to come out even now. There are still 2 months before the conference begins. We'll see how it goes, Leng Xingyue said. All right. Actually, the upper echelons of Miahua Palace all knew that the palace master went into seclusion because she hoped to become stronger. However, the gap between her and the person she cared about was getting wider and wider. There was no helping it. Who could compare to a hack? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.